Good evening, everyone. It is now 6 o'clock. It is Monday, January 9th. This is the Community Consolidated School District Board of Education, or District 59 Board of Education meeting. I want to remind all board members to please turn on your mic and speak loudly so we can hear you in the public and on the internet. With that, roll call, please.
Spino, absent. Lang,
Present.
Mencia,
Present.
Petrielli present. Reed,
Present.
Sager,
Present.
and Schumacher. Okay.
Okay, now we can rise to the Pledge of Allegiance, and can I hope that our Forest View students can lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Item 4.01, Forest View, overview of clubs. Principal Wall, I guess you have some special guests here for us.
Good evening. I'm Mike Wall. I'm the principal of Forest View Elementary. It's a real pleasure to be here tonight talking with you about one of our clubs. As you guys know, clubs are so valuable for kids, and it's something we really missed during the pandemic. I know when Dr. Sager and Mr. Reed were out at the school, it's something that we talked about as being glad to have back and how it can have such a positive impact on kids. Personally, I experienced the benefits of clubs with my older son, who was when he was in third grade. He started chess, came home and how to play chess. And apparently I learned somewhere how the pieces moved, but never got very good. And he proceeded to beat me in chess. And then I taught myself how to beat him in chess. And now he's gotten better than me again at chess. But now he's taught his little brother, his mom, siblings, cousins, anyone that comes by the house has to learn how to play chess. So I see the impact of our clubs, both in kids, but then also in our families, and it ripples out from there, and a positive hobby or something to enjoy. So those are only possible when we have adults that care about kids and make the time to have that happen. So we have two teachers here that have been making time for kids for many years and many clubs, and including these kids here who are learning cool things that they're excited to share with you tonight. So Mrs. Holloman and Ms. Kulda.
We're going to let the kids do the talking.
So I guess first I do the hat because it shows that on the screen. So so we had a loom that we had to take the yarn and pull it over, and slowly we had our own hats, and then we could make a pom-pom or a tassel or whatever we wanted. And yeah, we made our own hats, and then we also did a couple of bracelets. We learned crocheting, and that's how I crocheted my own bracelet. And then we did this other bracelet where we used this and then took the opening, third one clockwise, 1, 2, 3. We took that, put it into the opening, and repeated until we got a bracelet like this. And then we took straws and made a bookmark that you could transform into a bracelet if you wanted. And that's how we got our last bracelet. Then we learned cross stitching. We took a tiny needle and a template, and then we cross stitched our own little images. We had choices from a planet, a mermaid, a heart, and a cupcake. And that's it. And I'm from Shika, and I'm in 5th grade.
Hello, my name is Isabella. I'm in 5th grade, and I wanted to join the craft club because it sounded really fun, and I knew it would be a great experience to learn how to crochet and knit. Now I have learned how to create. Okay. Now I've learned how to crochet and knit. Now I have learned how to create many cool things. I've also made new friends. That's why I joined. And I have been making the hat, but I have not, like, the end part I have not finished yet.
Yours is still on the loom.
Yeah.
So instead of using knitting needles, they use the knitting loom. And then when you take it off, you can close it like Vamshika. And it comes off and has a nice hat. Okay. Anything else you can all?
And then, as well as Vamshika, I also made a bracelet with the cardboard. And I just finished it and I took it off the cardboard. And this is what it looks like. It pretty much looks like design, like it reminds me of a braid. So that's all I've made.
Ever since I was little, I have loved arts and crafts. Arts and crafts was kind of my thing. Ever since. By the way, my name is Chaitra, and I'm in 5th grade. I've joined the craft club because I love arts and crafts. Now I know how to make bracelets and necklaces. So the first one I want to show is, it's like a bracelet. Not really a bracelet, but I made it by, it's like toilet paper. I made it by toilet paper and popsicle sticks and buttons. And you basically start by, like, see over there on the, you start by pulling it up and keep on doing it until like it's finished, like that. And then you do it again and then keep on going. And then for the next one I did is a friendship bracelet, which you start with the blank cut, and then clockwise you count 1, 2, 3, take that one, and then pull it over this way, and then you start making a lovely braid. That's all.
Hello, my name is Haley. I'm in 5th grade, and as you know, I go Forestview Elementary. I really wanted to join the crafts club because it sounded fun and I wanted to learn more things. I also knew that I would make new friends. Now at home, I can make hats for my family. I will be showing the bookmark again. This is what you can use as not on your wrist. You actually used straws to make it, and I personally think it was really fun, and it's a quick little craft you could do basically anytime.
Hi, my name is Olivia. I'm in 4th grade. Ever since I was little, I love doing arts and crafts. I also loved being in this art club. And by using like the straws, I made this bookmark that can like be a bracelet too. And then I also made this toilet paper roll bracelet, and that's what I brought. Hello, my name is Shruti. I'm in 4th grade. I've always loved to make crafts and learn different things. Making crafts is fun. My favorite craft was the bookmark. We made the bookmark out of yarn, straws, and tape. Now I can make the craft and gift it to anyone. These are the bookmarks I made. We have to like tape 3 straws together and then put 3 pieces of yarn through the straw, and then like you go inside and out. So these are the bookmarks I made.
Hi, my name is Ayush Chinda. I'm in 4th grade. This school is my home. I joined this club because I wanted to learn how to stitch and do a lot of art. Now I know how to make bracelets and necklaces. They are so fun. You should try it out too. This is a friendship bracelet I made with the cardboard.
So, hi, I'm Jamie Holloman. I teach at Forest View. I'm the LRC teacher, and we just wanted to give the kids an opportunity to have a new hobby or craft, like Mr. Wall said, something that I've always enjoyed. Mrs. Kudla does some different crafts, and just from talking to the kids about different STEM activities and books, we were finding there was a big gap with what they could do and what they wanted to do. So we wanted to bridge that and give them some opportunities. And we had a great time with the kids. They were a lot of fun. So thank you.
So before you run off, I think some people have some questions and some comments, and I definitely want to see all the stuff that you've done because it looks really cool, and it's hard to see it from way back here.
So if I can, first question is, when does this club meet and how often? And
We were meeting after school on Thursdays from 3:35 to 4:35.
oh, very
And
good.
so they would chose to stay and visit with us, and then we could walk to the other side. Yeah. Oh, sorry.
So how long has the crafting club been going on?
I started it last spring with some of the students when we were talking with them. So we started, and then Mrs. Kudla and I started it in September, October, and we went for 12 weeks, 1 hour after school once a week, and we're hoping to do it again in the spring.
Knitting it, okay. So it's got like such a nice,
Looks very intricate.
soft texture.
How long did it take you to make
Wow, that's intense. I love it. That is so cool. You gonna wear it? Are you gonna give it to somebody? Yeah, you gonna wear it? I love it.
all up here in the front and take a picture.
You are perfect.
Yeah, get in the front. Awesome.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah.
Sure.
It was a Monday.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly.
It's so cute. Forest View. K-8 literacy pilot.
Nice job.
Okay.
Only like 20 minutes. Okay, so I'm turning this over to, who am I turning this over to? Thank you very much, everyone. We appreciate that. And just so some of the students told me that they actually took these projects to work them at home to get them done in time. So that was pretty impressive, like a homework assignment almost from a club. So now we're on to 4.02 K through 8 literacy pilot. Susan, I'm assuming this is you and your team.
Good evening. I'm very happy that tonight we have a team of teachers who have been working on our literacy review process, and they're going to share with us the work that we have done with the pilots, where we are in the process, and how that has worked. I thought it'd be very helpful for you to hear from them some of the details about how they felt about the work. And then next month, we will bring a resolution for discussion with full information, K-8, for what we're looking to propose. Our K-5 team is still finishing up right now in the next 10 days or so. So I will let them jump up and they can introduce themselves as well.
They're as organized as the students.
Now there's one too many chairs.
Oh, I love it. All right. Well, thank you for having us this evening. Again, my name is Alyssa Coker. I'm the literacy coordinator for the district. And with me tonight, right here, we have Lisa Lang. She's a 5th grade teacher at Brentwood. Next to her, we have Sarah Cruz, 3rd grade dual language teacher at Robert Frost. And then we have Christine Ibarra, who is at Friendship Junior High, and she teaches 7th and 8th grade dual language classrooms. And then Dr. Maureen Lawndorf is at Holmes Junior High, and this year she has 6th, 7th, and 8th grade advanced classrooms. Dr. Joshua Perdomo is hanging back there too. He'll be presenting with us tonight. And we do have Sandy Lombard, who teaches at Rupley, who has joined us tonight as well, and she's one of our pilot teachers. So thank you for coming and supporting. Let's see here, we do this. Down is forward. Last time, I don't know if you remember, but it was really not working well. Hold on.
Okay.
Oh, up.
One of the two.
Oh, one of the two will work. Okay. We're good. We're good. So our work that we've done with literacy is really to ground the conversation is, there we go. Grounded in the work of our strategic plan, Goal 1, that readiness, achievement, proficiency, and growth, our curriculum clarity, and that aligned assessment system. It's really all connected to that key performance indicator that 80% or more of our students will demonstrate growth and have their learning needs met through the district's universal core resources. And so this is really a connection to last time I presented, which seems not that long ago, but it was last March when I presented on what the Curriculum Council and the work they have done. So in order to work within this goal, Susan had shared our curriculum review process. And really back in March, when I shared the work of the council and the dual language leadership team, we did a lot of learning about best practices in literacy and language development. We identified those priority standards. And if you remember, we had some of the council members standing up here reading those literacy belief statements to you. So this school year, we moved on to phase 2, which is the resource review. And really this is the heart and that, the phase everyone wants to get to, because this is where we look at those curricular resources and identify which one that we would want to adopt for our students. So during this stage, we're looking at the resources, and then we might do what is called the pilot. So our teachers today, we're going to take you through some of the logistics of what it looked like in our elementary and junior high classrooms as we went through that process. This all leads to phase 3, which later this spring and then into next year, we'll have that full implementation plan, just like you might be aware that we've had with math. So in order to do this, or when I share that curriculum framework and into implementation plan, this is what our framework looks like. And this is just a preview to kind of ground us in where that resource lies within our entire framework. If you look to the left, you could see that we had those literacy belief statements and those priority standards that we worked on last year. And that's just one component, big components, but one component of this entire framework. This phase 2 we were in is really trying to find out where those resources lie, that yellow writing right there. And you can see it's just one component of the framework. When we adopt a resource, we'll also talk about this framework and embed such practices, those small group differentiation, our language acquisition strategies. What does your daily literacy block look like now that we have these new resources, now that we have our priority standards, now that we have these belief statements that are going to ground our work? We'll bring this back to you when we share the implementation plan and then with those resources outlined and what that professional learning would look like. Wrong way. This slide was shared with the Curriculum Resource Committee, the board committee, on September 29th, as we were sharing what some of those critical features were as we just began that resource review. All those resources that we looked at, K through 8, have these features in it. Everything is evidence-based, been peer-reviewed. Also, a side note here, but within it, I never, want you to only think about the monolingual. We're also thinking about our dual language classrooms in it. So there might not be that Spanish identified, but when we talk about K2 foundational skills and spelling in those, certain classrooms, that means in Spanish, some that means English, and some that means both. So we wanted to make sure, if I could just briefly talk about this, especially bullet 1, that it was standards aligned. So we want to make sure that our students are getting grade level text in front of them and that our teachers are scaffolded into those grade level text. Too often we might have been differentiating, which means we're getting our students outside of grade level text. So, and especially in our junior high, we wanted to make sure that they were exposed to those texts, even if they were not themselves reading it, that they were engaged in those conversations about those texts. Yes.
I just wanted to ask a question,
Sure.
For those of us who may not be as familiar with the sort of the jargon, I guess, can you tell us what scaffolding is? And then if you could also help us understand the formative and summative assessments embedded with data analysis.
Yeah. And it's interesting because we're just starting to have some conversations about that differentiation versus scaffolding. And really when we scaffold is we're using a grade level text. So any of those resources that these teachers will share that we looked at have 4th grade level text, have 7th grade level text. And those are the texts that the students would be engaged with. Our planning before might have been, no, we can't read that. Let's go find other texts. But now what we want to do is scaffold into that. So what are those instructional practices that I can do in my classroom? So we're engaging with that 7th grade level text, all of us, and I'm not changing the text. So I'm giving those scaffolds to those teachers, to those students. And if you think of scaffolding for buildings and whatnot, right, eventually that goes away. When it's differentiation is what we have been doing in many cases, and we're changing the level based upon the kids can't read the text. And so instead of that 7th grade level text sitting in front of the students, it might have been at a 5th grade level. Oh, because now the students might be able to read it. Well, what happens is, kind of going to like the 3rd bullet point there, you're taking a lot of vocabulary out, right? And that's a huge indicator for really comprehending text, is that vocabulary piece. So making sure that we're getting, every single grade is getting that grade level text. They're getting the support to engage in it. They're reading and writing every day. So now they're writing about those texts that they're reading about. So now they have that content. They got something to write about instead of just my, day with my grandma or whatnot. And they're getting that rich vocabulary piece. We're really raising the bar to working with grade level standards, and the kids are getting that exposure then. So along the way with that grammar and conventions, and then the next bullet, that foundational skills and spelling, we have priority standards for that as well, the language standards and the foundational skills. So as we look at these programs, and especially obviously for those foundational skills and spelling, our resources are comprehensive, that they have, all the ones that we've looked at, have that all entwined. You're not just going over here for some grammar, over here for spelling, and then I'm maybe doing this writing. It's all linked under a common topic, a common theme, and it's developmental in an appropriate way then. So they're writing about the reading, and their phonics skills are being shown throughout that as well. Of course, all the programs too, it's not up here, but they have those options for small group work that you could differentiate, fill some gaps if needed, enrich when needed. That last bullet point with the formative and summative, the formative is just little checkpoints along the way. They're really for the teacher to understand where my students are at. And comprehensive resources have that for you. If you think back to math, it's those cool downs that they do every day. So in literacy, every program has something different of what they might call it or how frequent it is, but it's to let the teacher know how they're progressing through those standards that are the focus. The summative is more that comprehensive at the end. That, okay, we said we were going to focus on these 3 standards. How did the students perform at that? And hopefully that summative, there's some nice data dashboards or ways for us as a district or a school leader to look at those, the scores, to make some data analysis from that. Did that help, Courtney? Okay.
So are we are focusing on spelling, correct?
Mhm.
Okay, so we're focusing on that, and grammar is embedded, it's not separate.
Yes, it's so in the writing components of all the resources, it's embedded in. So there's certain language standards is where the grammar and the convention show up that are focused in on during the writing time.
Okay, so it's
It's
not like
part
what
of-
we used
yes.
to do, where we did the grammar separate with
No.
its own text and.
Yeah.
Okay,
It's all
it's
covered,
all
yep.
together. Okay, thank you.
How many actual classrooms are being exposed to these ladies in this program?
Yeah, the teachers will tell you that in just a moment. They'll give you the logistics of who's been involved in elementary and junior high, because it's been slightly different, just because our elementary had to live out their year 1 of math implementation last year. So we were able to move just a little bit quicker within junior high because they strictly teach ELA and SLA.
Actually following
Mar-
through
Mar-
on
let's-
Patty's question.
Let's get through the presentation, then we can ask some questions afterwards. We'll have questions after. Let's get through the presentation.
Want me to wait?
Yeah, can you wait, please, Marnell? Thank you.
It's following through on her question, however.
That's okay. That's okay. There's a lot on here, so I'm glad I could answer that, because now the teachers will tell you very specifically what we have done then, now that I've grounded you and we've gotten back onto the literacy. So Christine, I'm going to have you take over. Thank you.
So how we got started, we started with resources that had all green ratings on Ed Reports. So Ed Reports is an outside vetting process. They have their own rubric that they use with a lot of different categories and criteria to rate curriculum. So we started by looking at green was the highest rating. So we looked at those resources first. For English curriculum. For Spanish curriculum, Ed Reports has not done any vetting on Spanish resources. So Dr. Perdomo reached out to some neighboring districts that have dual language programs. And that's how the search got started on the Spanish, for a Spanish resource. We attended virtual resource overview presentations with various curriculum companies. We previewed print and digital materials. At the junior high level, we got started in May of last year because we teach, as Alyssa said, only one content area. We had a little bit more capacity because we weren't doing a math implementation. So we were able to get started in May, and then elementary got started in late August, early September of this year. Starting in May of last year was actually pretty helpful because we were able to learn from experience to see that we actually wanted to pilot two resources together to be able to have something to compare our experiences with. In the spring, we were just piloting one resource, and so it was kind of hard to determine what we liked and what we didn't because we didn't know if other resources would have those same offerings or not. And then as teachers, we submitted feedback per resource. So we rated things like the teacher and student materials, what we thought of the assessments, language supports, the level of differentiation that was offered within the program, ease of use for students and for teachers. So that's how we got started.
The process was intentional and thorough because we were looking for a core resource. It's not the only resource, but you wanted a core resource that was the same across all of our grade levels at junior high. We were looking for something that had authentic research that showed that the reading and writing skills were going to be balanced with the content to enhance the literacy of our students. We wanted authentic research that would support direct instruction, reteaching, correction, and if I could address the grammar piece, it's embedded with many, many resources for support. We are really excited. The fact that we are including writing conventions is huge because that is going to, those particular skills will really help to fill in the gaps that our students sadly have accrued over the past 7 years. Really, really excited. And as one who's using Study Sync already with the students, I see the improvement in their writing and even in their reading. It's very exciting. So our process was so thorough. And now as we apply the information, the program, it's already reaping its benefits. Study Sync, we have found in the process, provides a balance of the skills as well as a balance of the content. And what that's doing is going to affect and it's going to enhance our global learners because that's what we have in front of us. It builds on the skills that children have. It provides the skills that the children need, and it provides many enhancements to raise the level for our kids.
It was also really important for us to have a wide variety of classrooms, schools, and programs that were piloting these programs to ensure that we were getting the best overview of each program. In addition to the teachers that are on the literacy committee, an interest survey was also sent out to all teachers in the districts to complete if they were interested in piloting. Because of that, we were able to secure at least 2 teachers from each elementary school, one in primary, one in intermediate, and each grade level had multiple teachers piloting the English program and the Spanish program. We also had 3 dual language teachers piloting the English program materials as well. Piloting teachers received appropriate materials as well as student interactive books that the kids all had for their use. Teachers and students were also given access to all of the online components of both programs. There were in-person 1.5-hour overview sessions that kicked off each new pilot. And we have also been given additional online supports as well in-person meetings with representatives from both companies that have kind of helped as we have gone along and had questions and needed clarifications. Our first pilot, as you can see, was October 10th to November 18th. And that was with My View in English and Mi Visión in Spanish by Sabas. Teachers did meet at the conclusion of this pilot to discuss the usability as well as the strengths and weaknesses of this program. As Alyssa had said, elementary teachers are currently piloting the second programs right now into reading by Houghton Mifflin Harcourt and Adelante by Benchmark, which is being done in Spanish. So we will meet again at the conclusion of this one, of this pilot, to again go over the usability, strengths, weaknesses, and kind of look at the two together. Sarah?
In both pilots, teachers were asked to focus on a list of things during these pilots. The list included access to various text types, the physical books in hand, as well as materials on the computer, authentic writing experiences, formative and summative assessments, how much the students were engaged, and if the program allowed student-led discussions, every lesson to be aligned with the standards, also the culturally appropriateness of the materials, also authentic Spanish literature, and that was especially important in the Spanish pilot. We want to put authentic books in their hands. In the past, we've just had translations, and these were done by authentic Spanish authors, which was important to us. Finally, they were asked, did the program provide enough resources to teach the standards at each grade level the best that they could? After each pilot, the teachers are sent a survey in regards to those areas. They're asked for their perspective, their thoughts on each program, and also the thoughts of their students. The students enjoyed being a part of the process and being asked what they thought. As you can imagine, they were very honest in their opinions. They often had positive and negative both, but they gave each program a chance. Now, Dr. Perdomo will now talk more about the survey process and the next steps.
So as we talked about, after each of the pilot, the curriculum council and the dual language leadership team came together to collaborate. So the dual language leadership team and the curriculum council aren't necessarily all teachers that were in the pilot, but we felt it was important for each of those leadership committees to be a part of this conversation so that we can all drive this decision forward and we all have that feedback. So junior high has made the decision. They'll bring that proposal to the board next month to adopt StudySync for ELA. And elementary, as you've just heard, we're finishing our pilot through January 20th. And then we'll reconvene as a council for literacy, as well as a dual language leadership team. And then we'll discuss what are the pros and the cons for each of those, and then make a recommendation on which of the two we would like to move forward with.
So you could see that the timeline was a little off between the junior high and the elementary. But we thought it was good to have this presentation together right now to say what that review process looked like, because even though the timeline was a little different, we still went through the same steps. So even though we're a little ahead of the game with junior high, and we know what we want to bring to you and share about StudySync, we will wait for that determination and bring also the K-5 to you on February 13th with that board vote that next month. Once that's all said and done, you will see a implementation plan and with three-year goals. But we will start the process with Institute Day coming up with junior high, and they'll spend some time unpacking the framework, looking at our belief statements, looking at our priority standards in order to later this year in April, after the official vote, and have a one-day training or a half-day training with the publisher. All our junior highs, as you saw, besides maybe just a handful of teachers, have already been piloting it. So their level of training doesn't have to be in depth as that K through 5. But we hope to use that April Institute Day for all K through 8 for initial training on our core resource. And then from there, once we know, and it's working with the publishers to determine that professional learning plan and support for the rest of the year, optional sessions during the summer and whatnot. So we're almost there, not quite there yet. But now this is the time. We're done with all our logistics. Thank you so much, ladies, and Dr. Perdomo for sharing. Are there any questions from the board?
So as part of the implementation, I know it was discussed since the junior high teachers were piloting this.
Yes.
Are they able to continue from
Yes,
here to
yes,
the end
thank
of the
you,
year
thank
and
you.
sort of
Yeah.
soft implement now?
And
keep
it is. It's
materials?
soft implementation year 0. There's a fun, a couple
Yeah,
names that we
different ways
could
to say
use,
that,
but they are. The junior high is going to use 2 more units from Study Sync. The materials just came in. You'll get them tomorrow. They're on the truck. So we'll have that soft implementation. Our trainer's still available for us as we kind of work through the process. I'm going to actually coach and go into 2 grade levels, be able to get my hands down and dirty with that and plan with them, be in the classroom. So I'm excited about that. And we'll get some feedback. Study Sync ELA for junior high has a plethora of text to use for each unit. So we'll do a little bit of data gathering to see like, hey, Grove did use these texts, Friendship used these. What do we think are really great texts that we'll put in our implementation plan to use at that? So we'll do a little bit of that data collection
But
this
in the
year.
meantime, we'll be sort
Yes.
of
Yes.
working through those kinks
Exactly.
now
Exactly.
and get the materials to the students and to teachers
Yes.
the rest of the year.
Yep. They have them. Yep.
So can I ask a broader question, which is, are we reserving like the details of Study Sync and the rationale behind why you chose Study Sync versus the other resource for that February conversation? And this was more about like process.
Exactly. This was just, you heard me last March talk about what the council did, that phase 1 of the evaluation of just our literacy curriculum framework in general. This is that phase 2. This in between of it's not a fun phase because there's a lot going on of K-8, 2 languages, what's out there that will best meet the needs of our students. So this is that broad picture of piloting. What does that look like? Evaluating, what did we get feedback on? And then once we determine which ones, we will on February 13th share a little bit about each one, share what that implementation might look like, cost, professional learning plan, all that.
That's awesome. And I guess just 2 points to mention is I want to say it was like slide 3 or 4, where you gave us the broad slide with the various columns of like, here's the resources here. I find this to be a super useful slide. So I just want to thank you for kind of contextualizing it in the bigger picture, because I think we as the board sometimes like get into these little holes, and it's nice to see it with more of like a 100
Exactly. And you know what? It's one of these too, because the teachers will say, we couldn't wait to get to this stage because we're like, we want to get into the good stuff, right? Like, let's look at these resources, the programs. But it was great for us to take that step back. It's just that piece of it, right? Like, without our priority standards, the resources could be nothing. Without great instructional routines or lesson structures, just how all this has to come together for that context. So,
and I guess just one last point, which is more of a question. When it comes to Study Sync, are we going to be able to pair sort of and I'm wondering if we still do iReady for the literacy piece. We're going to be able to pair an assessment that's from the curriculum itself so that we have both in the same way for math. We have iReady, but we also have the assessments that are coming out of the resource.
Yeah, you a lot of these comprehensive resources have so many assessments within it and whatnot. So iReady is our diagnostic benchmark that we give the 3 times a year. Within Study Sync and what we decide for K-5 as well, we'll work at the district MTSS team to figure out what's going to be those summatives that we give to every 6th grade student a couple times a year, or the unit assessments that we might think of. What's the formative? That's for the teachers. That thing, we have a nice framework for that lays it all out. But iReady is still there, and also iReady with that personalized learning path that we've talked about. That's great to still fill in some of those gaps as we get kids onto grade level. Martell had.
Go ahead.
Well, Mrs. Petrelli brought up the spelling, and that's something that I think is very important, because when we had the last language arts program given to us 8-10 years ago or whenever it was, the whole thing had to do with writing. If they could write good stories, that's all that was important. When the board members would look at the stories, they were interesting, but there were so many spelling errors that it was just absolutely ridiculous. I'm glad that you're working on that and have some type of a way to check and see if what you're doing is really working. Because when they're doing their writing, if their spelling is atrocious, which it used to be, then there's something still wrong with their program. So good luck.
I want to piggyback on what Mardell just said, which is you said that this is evidence-based, all the programs, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so especially at the early reading level, right, when you're doing K through 2, there's a lot of research that we have to incorporate more phonics than had been done under the previous program, which helps with spelling and that sort of thing. These programs all have that, right? What's considered the science of reading, right?
Yes,
Where
it's all backed, and we can go back to the if I'd used this right ever in my life. If we could go back, good joke. It's all that K2 foundational skills and spelling, and then the standards all aligned.
Right.
You know, there are foundational skills standards, and we all said they're all priority when the council met. It's all based upon how kids learn how to read. The brain research, and I talked back in March, I got a little bit on my bandwagon about the brain research and the decoding, the reading of text, and then the encoding, which is the written text, and how that has to be paired together. So when we think about spelling, you'll see spelling, but it's not going to be some typical, here's the list of color words or whatnot. It's going to be matched directly to what they're learning within phonics in either language, in English or in Spanish.
Right, and so that was going to piggyback on, these all include decodables, right?
Yes.
Where they'll be
Mhm.
focusing on
Yeah.
sounding out words and
Yes.
breaking them apart rather
Yeah.
than, there was a philosophy of reading before that was maybe not so good.
Exactly. So we have everything that we need. The kids are writing, they're reading, they're decoding appropriately. Sarah, Lisa, you're an intermediate, so yeah.
No problem.
They're intermediate.
I was even going to say too, at the 5th grade level, some of the things that we've been working on are even multisyllabic words with open and closed syllables. And I mean, when I talked to the kids, I'm like, okay, we're going to break these down and we're going to chunk these. And they were like, oh, we love this. We haven't done, and oh, this is why this is like this. And so a lot of kind of like, aha, when it comes down to just that breaking down of words. And so this is why we read it like that kind of thing. And so even the excitement with them, with doing, just that grammar and that breaking down of words has already shown through.
Yeah, as a parent whose kids went through the prior program, that was something that was really missing. And it all of these programs, I don't want to answer for you, but all these programs have that that part of it that was missing, which is, how do I want to say this? The students need a little bit of direct instruction on why the English language or the Spanish language has these strange rules.
Well, and we're looking at final consonants right now, the AL, the LE, the things like that, and why it's like that.
And so just like we have in math, now you work through the patterns and learn the details underneath. This is the same idea in reading.
And if I could speak for the Spanish dual language, I would say in my time here in the district, there hasn't been a time they've given us the Spanish grammar of what you needed to teach, but not how to teach it. And so for the first time in our hands, we had a book that told us and showed us how to specifically, we were all doing it. We were all teaching Spanish grammar, but all in different ways. So how Dr. Perdomo might teach it might be different than how I did. This would make it so we all were teaching it the same way. Since I was piloting, I showed it to a lot of my coworkers, and they were so excited. In fact, they wanted to steal the materials because they liked it. As we know, for dual language, how we teach Spanish is different than how we teach English. I feel like before we had a good Spanish program, but it was kind of like, in the words of Dr. Perdomo, a la English, right? These are written by authentic Spanish speakers and specifically for Spanish, teaching the kids not only Spanish and the grammar parts of it, but also to the comparisons with English as well.
Yeah.
So I feel like this is exactly what we need.
Yeah, to ask questions on that point. Because I know in the past, so like for example, I believe that the term used today was like authentic Spanish, I think was what was used. So the Spanish resources are not English resources translated into Spanish. Now these are actual Spanish resources, that.
Yeah, to be transparent, I would say the majority,
Mhm.
over 90% of it, is
Mhm.
authentic, not a translation of the text. There are still some, just to try to be able to incorporate some of the thematic units that they have in
Yeah.
there. So they're not 100% authentic.
Mhm.
But I would say over 90% of the stories that they have in there are not. If you're reading, the brown bear, you're not reading el oso,
Sure.
café.
Mhm.
You're reading a different text.
Sure.
The other piece that I just wanted to hit on was that K2 foundational, because I know we were talking about that piece, and that in the dual language, one of our pieces when we were looking at all of the different options was for our dual language classrooms to have that opportunity to teach within their day K2 foundational skills in English and in Spanish, because it is crucial, as we've been talking about, the way you learn to read and write in English is very different than how you read and write in Spanish, and you have to be taught both. So there's that time and the place within the schedule to be able to explicitly teach those foundational skills in both languages, because we're not making the assumption that if you learn it in one, you automatically make that transfer. We have to make sure that that's happening in K2. And so that was another piece that we did.
And Dr. Perdomo, what's your confidence level? Because one of the things that stuck out to me was at the start of the presentation, we said, all right, we looked at ed reports, everything that was flagged green, that was vetted, but there wasn't the equivalent in Spanish.
Yeah, so Ed Reports doesn't have it in Spanish, and that's because nationally, not every state has adopted the Spanish language arts standard. So Illinois just adopted them this past year. So the reason why the Ed Reports don't exist is because on a national level, it's not there. One of the things that we did do, though, is not only do we look at our English counterparts that have that Ed Report, almost all of those did have a Spanish component. So we didn't want to make the assumption alone that just because they were green in Spanish means that they're going to be green in, or green in English means they're green in Spanish. So that's why we did go that extra mile and kind of research out there. What are other dual language programs utilizing? I did connect with Adelante, who is our auditing firm, and talk to them about what do they see the top districts utilizing? What are they seeing that's being out there? And also just doing research on looking at who are those researchers out there and what are some of the programs that they have put their names on, and what are some of the things that they've talked about authentic resources being in there. So from there, we narrowed it down to 5 different resources, and then we had teachers choose from those 5 too. And we felt there was a lot that were shown to us, and we felt confident in those 5, and then now narrowing it down to 2.
I think the parents are going to be a lot happier too after listening to them at the last curriculum meeting. If they hear all this and their children actually grasp what you are saying, we've really made great strides. And I think the big thing is right now you're all very optimistic. That's great. But what if something fails along the way? Be aware of the fact that nothing's perfect. And some of these things aren't going to work just like you think. But don't be afraid to change it, because it has to be changed.
If I could just say one thing too, I'd like to assure you that at the junior high level, StudySync has the resources embedded that we can use to help build those skills, the writing skills, the reading skills, the spelling skills. It has that built within. So that's one of the reasons that we have aligned ourselves with StudySync.
Go ahead.
Sounds good so far.
Okay. I have a couple of questions. One, so what are the other teachers using while you guys are using these what sound like really good materials? Are they able to like swipe a few things from you so that they're not so far behind? And are we going to be ready to roll come fall? Because I feel like the ones that are getting the program, they're going to be doing great. They're going to be able to really fly in the fall. But I'm wondering how the other kids that are still using Lucy Calkins, who has never been a real favorite, will say that
The
out
junior
loud.
high and elementary, have been on some separate paths here. So junior high, as I mentioned, everyone's using StudySync. There's a few Spanish dual language teachers that are still using the learning experiences. And obviously we have to look at the language allocation as well. StudySync has a few Spanish resources, but it's nothing like a unit in itself. So I think with the trajectory of junior high, we're on a good path. We're already, in a soft implementation, if you will. We're moving ahead. Most students are getting the exposure with that.
In the elementary?
And with elementary, it is just you've got the table in front of you. How many?
At the elementary, it's 31 teachers in the whole district.
Okay.
So, I know what you're talking about with the disparity, but 31 compared to however
Mhm.
many elementary. There's a perfect example in 5th grade. There's 3 5th grade teachers in the district in English, 2 in Spanish.
Mhm.
So it's a very small that are
Yeah.
going through these pilots that are only
30 days.
30 days as
Mhm.
well.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So everyone else is using the scope and sequence that was created for this year, using the learning experiences as is. We do have the priority standards or learning targets that they go off of that's directly linked to the report card. So they're using that right now.
But we'll use the new stuff next year.
Yes.
Everybody.
Yeah. So if everything goes as planned with the timeline, everyone's first introduction, first training would be that April Institute Day, and then we'll just roll from there. And it'll be great that we've had teachers in every building use the resource. So they're going to be really, hopefully on the implementation team and be able to be those teacher leaders within their own school building.
We've got a big amount of our school year left for this year. So I hope that you don't wait until next year to give this out to everybody else. You can start passing it around slowly.
Well, they've seen it for sure, but we want to make sure that we're aligned to the standards so we have a common experience this year. There's been talk and, elementary, Lisa was just trying to persuade me now and reasons why of what we do after this, right? So we really have to just take that step back and look at the bigger picture of that step forward. Unfortunately, we have the timelines, right, of presenting to the board and approval and then actually purchasing materials. It's gotten better out there. We've gotten stuff for Study Sync pretty quickly, but the whole ordering process also takes some time as well.
So the existing elementary curriculum, sorry, am I stepping on your toes? You want to go?
No. I was stepping on
So
that.
much to say.
So much to say. The existing elementary does include phonics, though, right?
Correct.
At
Yeah,
the
and then
K2
the
levels, it's
and
the sort of add-on to the Lucy
the
Cotton
phonics patch
thing.
is what we're calling it for
Yeah.
this year because we knew that discrepancy. So all K3 classrooms, they've already had something in Spanish, Phonetica y Gramatica, and then they have Sadler from phonics to reading.
Right.
As like a
we've
yeah,
patched the existing curriculum with phonics. It's
Yes.
just this is now embedded in
Yeah.
the new curriculum. So it's not that there's no phonics stuff.
And I, want to think back to the framework piece that the resource is a small component. It's a powerful, especially to a teacher, day in and day out. But we want to make sure that foundation of the priority standards, what those mean, the literacy belief statements, instructional practices. If you have some text at your grade level, that's great. But that is where, the key is there as well. So, thinking through, I don't want to put so much emphasis on a resource. It's huge and we're excited about it, but there are other things that we can be building this year. So when we do have a new, president in front of us, we're using it with our kids in mind and what we all believe in District 59.
Yeah.
Eeny, meeny, miny, moe.
I hope I'm using the right word, but I wanted to talk about structures and routines. Is there anything, this is just generally, is there anything with the new resources that would be a new structure that we're doing, a new routine that we're doing that we're not doing today?
Possibly, especially at K2, direct and explicit foundational skills. What we've done in the workshop model is very small snippets of teaching with a lot of work, of kids out there doing the work. That makes it really tough on a teacher when I have, we've talked about class sizes here. So you've got some larger class sizes and be able to individualize instruction for all of my 28 students. If I take the step back, chunks of those kids probably need, some same gaps filled. So when I think of foundational skills, because, it's all out there, we need to work on that. We need to teach our kids how to specifically read the text in front of them. So if we give them that explicit, direct instruction where they're getting a taste of it now because that phonics patch that we're talking, that Sadler resource, it's doing that. The programs right now, or that they're piloting also do that. So that, I just think right off the top of my head with a routine, that block of time you might have is going to look different. I've dealt with it with the junior high, that they're doing a lot more teaching, a lot more whole group, because the kids might not be able to independently read that 7th grade level text. But we're all reading it together and talking about it. And we have different strategies, culturally and linguistically responsive strategies that we could be using. So just off the top of my head, those are just those few routines, practices within your classroom that might be a little bit different.
Okay.
Okay, I have a question for you, actually. I was wondering if you ever get a chance to actually go into the classroom and you specifically teach the lesson, I'm like a hands-on person. I got to see it. I got to be able to touch it. So if I'm suggesting a curriculum, I want to get in there, get my hands dirty, and see if I can do what I'm expecting teachers to do. Do you guys ever get the opportunity to do that, or is that something that we could do, that you guys can boots on the ground with the teachers?
Yes, I would say that Alyssa has been in every single classroom working with staff. I have visited. I haven't had the opportunity to actually teach one of the lessons from the pilot. However, Alyssa has been in, Nicole has been in with our math implementation. Michelle is in, Nicole again is in, and Dr. Perdomo is often in classrooms as well, working alongside staff and seeing how that's going. However, the process is very, very thorough, because the reason why we had the Literacy Council do the work with the staff, so the staff have that understanding and capacity to make these great decisions, so that we have many, many people in the district understanding how a core resource fits into a curriculum framework, not just a few people, but many, many people. So that is how the process has unfolded. But yeah, I agree. It is exciting to see those resources, and I'm not going to lie. One of them that is currently being piloted right now at elementary, I'm like, oh, I would love to get in and use this as well, because it is exciting to see it, and it creates sort of that impetus to go and do that. But there's been multiple people trying it out, but really the goal is to build staff capacity through the process.
Thank you.
Along that same line, but just a little different twitch to it, rather than the people who are in charge of it coming into the classroom, I would like to see the teachers who are not using it come in and watch you people do it, because then they're actually seeing how it should be done.
Yeah, and we'll have that once we implement like what they've done this year with the math demonstration classrooms. It's hard with the pilot, right? You're trying things out, so I don't know if they would want any visitors. They got scared when I walked in sometimes, because you're trying something out. You're like, I have no idea what I might do, but you're trying something out. But we'll definitely have something in place for people to be able to get into each other's classrooms. And we've all, at least for Study Sync, since we kind of know that route, talked to a few districts that are using it. So we'll do the same once we know and make that decision for elementary.
Well, good luck.
So I want to thank all of you. That was a tremendous job. And most importantly, I want to thank you for all the work that you all are doing and have been doing for many, many months. I think we have heard the word curriculum said many, many times in this room. And I'm sure at some point it's hard to hear some of the narrative that has been spread around our curriculum work. And I think what you demonstrated tonight is that we are absolutely deeply engrossed in this work and committed to doing it the right way. This curriculum framework that you see in front of you is mirrored off of the math framework as well, and the math implementation that went through. So this is not new, but the key takeaway, when you hear the word curriculum, I want you to visualize this. Because when sometimes we hear the word curriculum, you think about the resource, you think about a textbook, you think about spelling worksheets, you think about the stuff. There is so many components and pieces that teachers have to master in order to make that high impact in the classroom. And the resource that they're piloting is not the magic bullet. They are the magic bullets. And it's giving them the resource and the tools and the capacity and the professional learning, the opportunities for collaboration, the opportunities for modeling and for learning together as a community that really is going to make the difference in the implementation of this work. And I think while there is a sense of urgency and we can't go fast enough, we could also go so fast that we do the wrong thing. And I think that the pace that you're taking, the leadership that Susan has provided, as well as Alyssa and Nicole and the Literacy Council, they started and did it the right way by really learning in that first column what good reading instruction is, what good literacy instruction is for our kids. And I'm super excited and super proud. And I hope that this is a testament to the curriculum work that is going on a daily basis here in District 59. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry, and also Dr. Perdomo. I know his. I'm not gonna leave him out.
Okay. Item 5.0, comments and suggestions from the public. I want to thank everybody for holding out for that part of it. So quickly before we do this, tonight's a point of the meeting where we welcome public comments. Tonight's a regularly scheduled Board of Education meeting. The purpose of the meeting is for the board to properly address the items on the agenda publicly as required by the Open Meetings Act. To allow the board the time needed to address all agenda items, we ask you please limit your comments to 3 minutes. A board member will serve as a timekeeper and the speaker give the speaker notice when 30 seconds are remaining to allow the speaker to complete or summarize their thoughts. Public comment during a business meeting is a time for the board to listen to comments from the public, but it is not a time for two-way discussion between the board and the public. Please understand the board will not ask nor answer questions. If you have questions or wish to have a response to any item, please submit your comments in writing and the superintendent will follow up with a response. We also want to remind those in attendance this meeting is being video live streamed. The video meeting will also be archived and available for viewing after the meeting is adjourned. For those of you sharing public comment, be mindful that you're being broadcast live and your comment will also be included in the video archive. With that, our first speaker is Alma Kreitzer from District 214.
Hello. I thoroughly enjoyed that presentation and I actually knew what they were talking about. It's really nice to come down the list. You know, when they talk about nanotechnology at the high school level, I'm like, what? But this was really good. But greetings. Yes, I'm Alva Kreitzer. I'm from Township High School District 214. But I'm here tonight as the director of the North Cook Division of Illinois School Board Association. Greetings. During the fall division meeting, the association awarded the first round of Board Leader Recognition Program recipients. IASB Board Leader Recognition Program honors individual school board members who attend association events and professional development activities such as division meetings and the joint annual conference, as well as participation in workshops, online courses, and other training. Points earned in the previous program, Master Board Member and Leadership Academy, were transferred into the new Board Leader Recognition on July 1, 2021. This year, 239 school board members across the state reached the established board leader level. 428 members were honored as distinguished board leaders. Across the state of Illinois, about 50 school board members are legacy board leaders with 25 years or more of board service. North Cook recipients included Phil Pritzker from District 21, Anna Klimkowitz from District 211, Barb Hingles from District 54, myself, and Arlen Gould from District 21. Today, I am here to present Mardell Schumacher with the Legacy Award. Congratulations, Mardell.
Thank you, everybody who had anything to do with this.
I also want to let you know that Alva used to be a District 59 Board of Education member
It's
before moving out of 214.
45 years of board work.
Yeah.
And my children attended Byrd and Grove and graduated from Elk Grove High School, and I still live in District 59.
Congratulations, Mardell, and thank you so much for your longstanding service.
Thank you. I appreciate your compliment.
Deb Banky, please.
Mardell, did you really not know that was coming? Mardell, did you really not know this was coming? You didn't know that was coming?
No.
Oh, the look on your face, it was great.
Complete surprise.
It has recently been brought to my attention by current and potential Ridge parents a concern regarding the age cutoff for incoming kindergartners. Per the state, an incoming kindergartner must turn 5 before September 1st of the school year to be eligible for enrollment. That has always been the cutoff for Ridge until this year. In the current kindergarten handbook for the 2022-23 school year, a caveat was added specifically for Ridge. Quote, children who attend Ridge Family Center for Learning, which operates on a balanced calendar, must turn 5 within 30 days of the start of the Ridge school year. Ridge's first day of school this year was July 28th, 2022. One parent I spoke with had a child turning 5 on August 28th, and based on the handbook, her child met the age cutoff. When she went to enroll her child, she was told he needed to turn 5 within 2 weeks of the Ridge start date. This is another blatant example of the administration's agenda to systematically keep Ridge enrollment down and disassemble the school. A discussion item on tonight's agenda is the calendar for the 2023-24 school year. For anyone unaware, I just mentioned it, but Ridge is on a balanced calendar. This means they have a shorter summer break and have more breaks throughout the year, though they attend school for the same amount of days as the rest of the district. There are multiple evidence-based sources that a balanced calendar is beneficial than a traditional calendar, as shorter breaks mean more consistent student-teacher partnerships and less learning disruption, thus creating better educational retention. Staying on this topic, but adding the topic of transparency, it's curious that at the start of Ridge's school year, it was stated this will be our last July start date. How was this known when nothing has been decided, as it's a discussion on tonight's agenda? Finally, word is getting around that the SLT has been stating that they do not need board approval to repurpose Ridge. Let that sink in, that they are saying they don't need your approval to repurpose Ridge and create upheaval in our district, to uproot student and staff for their agenda. Board members, please remain alert. And thank you to the ones who listened to the community and voted accordingly. Thank you.
Ben Jarosh, did I see your name right? Yeah. And you also mentioned you want a response follow from the district. Can you say what you're going to what you need a response on so we make sure we can get that to you?
Sure. Yeah. I've never done this before, so I thought, if I didn't get a response, I should put my phone number there.
You're doing fine.
And just so you know, we give everyone 3 minutes, so they all have equal time. I will let you know when there's 30 seconds and then when time is up.
Okay. Thank you. I really I appreciate the previous comment. It's basically what I was curious about is sort of the future of Ridge's position. And, I know at the previous meeting, the redistricting was voted down, but I've also heard similar things where Ridge was maybe on a separate agenda or item from that, and its future was maybe a little bit more tenuous or had the option to change. So, I'm a fan of Ridge. I like the program. The district is doing good things there, it seems, and I'm just curious to see what the plans are going forward. So, thank you.
Can you hear him in the back?
Okay.
Pull the microphone up a little.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. I'm curious to know what the plans are. You're a tall fella.
The previous zoning, district voted down last time was separate, and still has the opportunity to change, and then also information about the change in start date and Thanks.
We'll make sure. Thank you, Ben. We'll make sure someone gets back to you on that.
Randy, if we could, before we jump into this, I feel that it's really important that the board hears accurate information, and I do want to state adamantly and definitively, and you could have individual conversations with any members of SLT. And I have had board members ask this specific question to one another or directly to me. I have it in writing, in communications, and I will state definitively that never has any member of SLT, nor would we ever advocate or state that repurposing of any of our schools would ever be possible without board action. I want to dispel rumors because I think that's unfortunate how those get spread, and it's not something that is true. And I want my board members to understand that that is not the statement nor the sentiment that any of us would ever make.
Understood.
Okay, so item 6.0, thank you, Dr. President. Item 6.0, the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
Where are we?
Oh, Mardell has to do it.
Yeah, Mardell, it's you. I'm used to having you do it.
All right, I can't find it, but I'll punt. Be it resolved that on the 12th day of December, 2022, the Community Consolidated School.
January. Is it December 12th? It's January 9th.
Pardon me?
Are you looking at December meeting minutes or January?
Consent agenda.
Mm-hmm.
What day are you using? 'Cause today's Monday, January
Oh, that's
9th.
that's the December meeting.
Oh, this.
Please look at the minutes.
Whoop. Okay, we'll try again. Be it resolved that on the 9th day of January 2023, Community Consolidated School District 59 approved the consent agenda as presented and amended. 601, approval of minutes. 602, prior meetings. 602, disbursements resolutions. 603, acceptance of financial reports. 604, acceptance of recommendations, human resources report, cameo resignations, and 605, approval to destroy 18-month-old or older closed session recordings.
Second.
Second by Dr. Sager. Questions or comments?
Mardell, she needs it.
That's
Patty
the
needs it
official
back.
one.
That's the official one. There we go.
It's like gold.
There we go.
Questions, comments? Okay, roll call, please.
Espino,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia.
Aye.
Petrelli, aye. Reed,
Aye.
Sager,
Aye.
and Schumacher.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay. Item 7.01, biennial review of board policies. I believe that's Dr. Aschel.
We have two policies this evening for biennial review. Typically, we see policies in our press update with many other policy updates. These are pulled out specifically because they require a review by the Board of Education every 2 years. Our policy 7180, prevention of and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment, is a policy that has required this type of review for some time. Policy 770, attendance and truancy, has new requirements from ISB this year, which adds the monitoring and review process. The recommended changes for policy 7180 are changes only to the footnotes in this policy. And for 770, it adds an attendance requirement for attending a civic event and also adds language on the monitoring and review process. Those are the only changes.
I guess I would just add a discussion. I looked at both the changes. They look appropriate to comply with law. And I guess to add more, I was trying to understand the civic event piece. And I think the purpose of that is to indicate that that is a valid sort of excuse for a day of absence is a student's attendance at a civic event.
That's correct. And the policy further defines the civic event. So it includes but is not limited to artistic or cultural performance or educational gathering that supports the mission of a sponsoring nonprofit organization.
Let me ask, like, big picture question for you, Dr. Russell. These policies, like, they're on, like, what do we do with them? You know what I mean? Like, we have this bullying policy. What do we do with it? Where do parents find it? How, like, obviously by law we have to have it.
Mm-hmm.
What does it do?
But how is it used?
Yeah.
So, our prevention and response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment policy is represented in a couple places. One, it is part of our family reference guide. Our parents, when registering, or guardians, when registering their children, need to sign off that they know where to access that, they can find it, they can view it. So, they have awareness of that policy from their entrance into the district and then at renewal points. We also have that represented on our website at all times. And it's also represented where we have student handbooks. So right now we have assignment notebooks at the junior high level. So that is part of the assignment notebook. Now that's where you can find it in writing. We also have that represented in expectation talks with our students at the beginning of the school year and ongoing throughout the year. You'll find it in our social emotional learning lessons about being an upstander, not a bystander. So there are many aspects where this is incorporated into our student learning, our policies, our procedures, and our practices.
Yeah, I think I was just thinking like, because I'm looking at the website now, you know, and for I think your everyday parent, it's hard to digest the board policies. I think for a lot of us, they're hard to digest. But I'm just trying to, I guess I'm trying to separate two. We have the policy, so like in the event of a bullying event, we have the definition of what bullying is, and et cetera, et cetera. But this is not necessarily a prevention guide, right? It's not necessarily like here's the steps that the district takes to prevent it. It's more what it is.
I think the components, the three that Katie listed, right? And this goes for all of our policies. We have policies, which are part of board governance. Then we have administrative procedures, which is where we come in and we proceduralize the policies. So how are we going to ensure that we meet the requirements of any of the policies? And then we actually put them and incorporate them into our practices. What type of professional development do we need to have? What types of things should be integrated into our curriculum for teaching and learning? What types of things do we make through our regular communication with our families to make sure that we are supporting the policy through our practices and our implementation?
Is it really more a case of the policies are something that legally protect us, but actually they're not helping us with discipline in the junior highs? I mean, that when you brought this up, that's the first thing that I thought of, because we're still having problems with bullying and fighting in the junior highs.
But
So
I think
policy is not really helping us with that problem.
But I think what Dr. Breslin pointed out, there's two different things. There's the governance part of it, and then there's the
So this is just the governance.
there's the governance part of it, and then there's the part of the SLT team and the district. I won't say enforcing, but basically,
I would hope that the governance,
you know, using the policies to come up with standards and procedures how to address issues that come up.
And the policies do help us with, they provide a backbone and ground to stand on for how we address behaviors and really to keep us being up to date and current and consistent, and ensuring that we're not violating rights of our students, regardless of which side of the bullying that is happening on. And I think that's why this is required to be reviewed on a regular basis, because we learn. The more data we go, you know, there's a lot of evolution in terms of bullying as we've progressed. I think just even understanding the definition, bullying, just like curriculum, bullying gets thrown around and not very many people truly understand what constitutes bullying by our legal definition. So I think it is a backbone and it's important that we have it. It is a legal protection for us, but it gives us that guidance to implement what we know to be best for kids based on research and best practices.
And can I just ask a question related to that too? So issues of bullying and our desire to improve these at the district, which committee does that fall under? Is it safety? Is it behavioral?
It could be either, but most often that's our behavior intervention committee, which is comprised of family members, community members, and staff, and meets regularly. We review discipline data that we see, trends in discipline data. We will be reviewing bullying and harassment data coming up. I believe our next meeting is January 26th. And so we look for trends, which then allow us to respond preventatively or responsively to what's happening in our schools very regularly. The safety committee is also one that would look at reporting procedures. For example, that committee a few years ago initiated a new anonymous tip line. So it could be handled in either, depending on the content, but both would be supporting prevention of bullying.
Yeah, and so if parents, community members are concerned about these issues or have sort of feedback about these issues, are those committees open to attendance?
Yes.
And you can find those committee meeting dates on our district calendar.
Correct. I would also share that anyone who has any concerns of bullying can truly reach out to any staff member in our district about that concern, and it will find its way to the proper channel so that we can resolve it.
And just to plug real quick, the Behavior Intervention Committee is a board committee, and we do have a board representative for that committee, which is Ms. Petrielli. And the dates are listed on our board assignment list as well that we agreed to at the beginning of the year.
But do we have a committee made up of teachers and administrators who work on these problems in the junior high level? Because we've been telling, people have been coming to our meetings the last 2-3 months saying it's violence in the actual word they've used is violence twice in these. From what I've been told, it's not just Grove, it's Grove and Friendship. So it seems to me we've got to have somebody who is in the educational field, not parents or board members, who's actually working on what we're going to do. Because for any of us to go into one of these schools isn't going to help anything.
Yes, that occurs at the Behavior Intervention Committee. And we also have committees at our schools that are working on their own specific needs and making sure that they are improving at all times.
Good. Well,
So
keep
that's a
track of
regular
whether they're
review.
getting any benefits out of this, because it really bothers me when people come to a meeting and say there's violence, and that's the actual word, which really bothers me in our junior highs.
So in going through the ISBE requirements that we have, if I go line by line through that, our policies have mostly everything that is required. I would say there's a typo that I don't know if I should mention or not, but one of the policies is not named the same in our policy manual as is in the, but that's less of an issue. My bigger issue is with the bullying policy. In the policy itself, it has section 11, which says as part of this 2-year review, we are supposed to have the superintendent or a designee shall assist the board with its reevaluation and assessment of this policy's outcomes and effectiveness. Mm-hmm. That process shall include without limitation the frequency of victimization, student, staff and family observations, identification of areas where bullying occurs, types of bullying, bystander intervention or participation. So where's that is my question.
So we can
or how do we do that process, right? Because I don't necessarily know that that's us looking at the data. That's maybe you telling us what the data says rather than.
So we can do that through the Behavior Intervention Committee. I think that is truly what makes the most sense, because that is a committee designed to look specifically at student behavior and its impacts in the district, any harm that's being caused, and respond to it. So that review can take place with input from staff. I truly think that is a key component, and we need staff voice when we are completing those reviews and looking at our data. So it is a holistic approach that takes into account various viewpoints. Then that information could come to the board in a recommendation. Right now, as it stands, we have, in relation to the size of our district, very few incidents that do not give us specific trends in location, in victimization, so on and so forth.
Small statistics, right? So
yes.
It may vary year to year, but it's small numbers. Okay.
That's correct. Mm-hmm. So not to say that when issues occur, they are not issues. They absolutely are. We take them very seriously. But the data does not suggest certain trends that would require us to change this policy.
Mm-hmm. And when something rises to the level of an individual student violating some policy in some extreme way, it tends to come to the board in a closed session where we discuss that particular incident, right?
Yes, certain types of incidents.
Where it would account for the location, the involvement of others, that sort of thing. And so that data is presented more on a case-by-case basis.
Correct.
Okay.
And at that point, the board can decide if this person should be sent to the special school.
Right, and then.
But we also get updates from Dr. Brejan on incidents that happen in school and outside the
Yeah,
school.
my concern is those are
on occasions
extreme
that are added to a
cases.
certain level.
Does that necessarily meet the standard of we're supposed to be monitoring bullying as a whole across the district as part of this review process?
I really feel that that function happens at the Behavior Intervention Committee. So at the last
Okay.
meeting, we actually reviewed our behavior data, not specifically bullying, but we reviewed all of our behavior data
Which includes
as a
bullying,
committee, which includes that. And so that is a function and that is a board committee. So when there are minutes and reviews, that is part of your
Okay.
review.
Okay. I'd
But
say
it
that's-
can
I'd say
also-
that's fair, a fair way for it to come.
Yeah.
come through.
However, that doesn't mean that you as a board can say, we want on a quarterly basis to see just, some data. I think the important part is there's a lot of context
But
around data. So
that's my
how we
concern
report that is
with such a small number of potential incidents, quarterly data is going to be so noisy where you would have quarters where there's
annual
nothing.
and to gauge us over time, I
Yeah.
think is more probably relevant and useful.
Yes, so maybe in the future, this comes through the behavior committee as a report every 2 years saying, here's the trends the behavior committee has noticed. And because again, it says guide, this data is used as part of that guide, but we don't necessarily look at that data individually.
Yeah, sometimes I even today we have an action item on safety and keeping the kids safe, and bullying is one of those pieces of it, and it evolves so much with social media, and so and it's very hard to I could imagine of tracking that data of what is an incident, what is not. But I think also too, one of the things that I think of is I don't know, and I don't know how the rest of the board feels. Like, are fights happening all the time in the junior high? I have no idea. Or how often that is happening. Are fights happening weekly in the junior high? No idea. I've had parents that have reached out to me with concerns about the safety issues and things, but I direct them to speak to their principals when those issues come up. But I think it's just one of those things that maybe, I don't know if that's where you're going at, Joe. It's just like, we don't know, how things look at the actual school level. If it should be something that needs more attention, I don't know.
I think the key to that is making sure that we are making evidence-based decisions, right? We have worked very hard this year to make sure that our reporting and our data is as accurate as possible so that when groups like the Behavior Intervention Committee are coming together, they are reviewing that and they have awareness of what that looks like across our district and across our schools. So, I would encourage that information to be brought back by the board representative, and I can also include that in the minutes from the committee to the board, as we have been prior in our last couple of meetings this year. And we'll do that again in our January meeting. So I think that will give better understanding of what is realistic and what is occurring in our buildings and what is not.
I think the key thing is, you have a concern or something comes up that you have a concern, reach out to Dr. Brejan and the staff to get clarification. They are here to answer our questions and to address anything that comes up, to address rumors, whether it be rumors or actually something. So we empower yourself to reach out if you hear something that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And we do track all of our behavior and discipline data. We report it. We are required by law to report it to the state. And there are reports that are publicly available that you can look statewide based on various offense codes and discipline codes and see where we stand. So those are, it is all there. It's not that it's a secret. It's just, it requires context.
Sure.
Because one rumor can create an entire narrative that is very discrepant from the reality. And always multiple sides when you're dealing with students and student behaviors. It's a complex piece. And I think that the conversations that we have on a regular basis with teachers, with staff, with administration, with parents, with our students are really the critical drivers, much more so than the statistics that are presented out at a board table. And I think that that's a conversation that I think if you want to learn more about that process and the day-to-day piece of it, I think it would be time well spent with any of our team members.
I think it's just a reflection, I guess, based on this conversation, is we all know that in the post-COVID era, we've had this mental health epidemic that sort of followed the actual health epidemic. And I'm sure behavioral issues carry some correlation to that. And it just makes me wonder if we think about having this as a focus area of some priority level, like in the next upcoming years as we recover from the pandemic, to make sure that we're addressing as best we can within our resources, like the mental health issues that then have an impact on the behavioral issues.
And that is already a very strong component of the instruction that we provide. We have lots of mandated units of study to work preventatively with our students' mental health needs. So there may be an aspect of educating and informing about what is already in place in preventative in nature in our schools as well.
Yeah, because I would say even though it's not the highlighted area in our strategic plan, it is, I would say, one of the top priorities since I've started here for sure. That is a regular ongoing conversation and intentional work around this. Explicit, targeted, intentional work, social emotional learning, behavior, discipline, documentation, our supports. I think this goes hand in hand when we talk about academic needs. It's all very intertwined. When we looked at those 8 tiles in our equity journey, these are implications of not having your needs met. Right? To your point about the pandemic and some of these things that we see. When our students' needs are not met, we see increases in misbehaviors. So the root is, let's meet the needs of our kids. So how do we allocate resources? How do we ensure that they have access to programming? How do we make sure that class sizes and highly qualified staff and programming and curriculum and engagement and differentiation and scaffolding and MTSS, right? Go on and on and on. Those are that whole curriculum framework. Those all lend. That's the root cause analysis when we start talking about people feeling violence in our schools. It's a symptom of students' needs not being met. And we have to best understand that and work through it. And I think, honestly, I think our team does a tremendous job. I think we're still learning what the overall impact is as we continue forward with our students.
And so maybe,
long-term.
sorry, just to follow up on that, I think maybe the core point then is finding the ways we make that more visible to the board, because it sounds a lot from what I'm hearing like the curriculum piece, right? Where we've heard people say, well, what about the curriculum piece? And it's like, okay, that's solidly chugging along in the background. It just may not be in front of our face all the time. And I think maybe this one even less so, that we hear about like the extreme incidents, but maybe through weekly updates, through maybe even a presentation, just raising our awareness level of what's already going on.
Yeah, because that answers my initial question, because like for the folks at home that click on this is just the rule. Thou shalt not steal. If you steal, this is what will happen. It's just the A, B, and C. But kind of the how do we build off that on the day-to-day of here's what we're doing, all because it's not, you can write you're not allowed to bully in school and that doesn't solve the problem, right? There's so many other things that have to be addressed.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Ashel. 7.02, 23-24 school calendar.
Good evening. This is our annual discussion about the calendar. Seems like a long time ago we were talking about the calendar, and it's hard to believe that we're talking about next year's calendar. But this is not a special discussion item. This is an annual discussion. So what I'd like to do tonight is walk the board through 4 items. Reminder of the calendar approval process, provide some additional background information about school calendars, give an update on the current calendars Implementation, what's going well, what we are looking to continue to improve, and then next steps, because we will need to act on a calendar next month. That is one of our focus items and the purpose of this discussion. So the first piece, the calendar approval process, the board annually approves 3 calendar related items a year. The board approves the school calendar, the official holidays, and the last day of school. So for the school calendar, that typically happens in January right now. And then the board acts on the recommended calendar in February. And one of the reasons, a couple of the reasons why we start that in February is, one, kindergarten registration is then right around the corner, and we need to know that first day of school. And number 2, very behind the scenes, we actually start beginning work on our payroll calendars as soon as it's approved. The district has over 40 payroll calendars that are built off of that school calendar, which is responsible for the functioning of every single paycheck for all of the different employee types. And people also like to know when breaks are in case they want to plan their vacations, of course. For the official holidays, that also happens in February, and we do not anticipate any changes for next school year, with the exception that there will not be an Election Day holiday next year. There was an Election Day holiday this year that was an extra day. There is not one next year. There will be one in 2024, but I will tell you about that a year from now during our annual conversation.
What about the school board election day?
That is not an
That's
official
not-
holiday
Okay.
in which we would observe that and not be here. The last day of school, we typically have board action on that in April. We like to get through the winter months, which where we live can sometimes include March, but that gives us plenty of time to make sure that people know what that last official day is. Right now on our current calendar, that is scheduled for Wednesday, June 7th. So that could change, but right now, barring no emergency usage days that could not be supported through any type of e-learning, that would be the last day. The last day, since it falls on a Wednesday, would have an early release, an hour early release, because it's a Wednesday, not because it's the last day of school. If the last day of school was on Thursday, it would be our regular hours. So that was the first piece I wanted to bring back to the board, since we talk about this once a year. That's the process. Now, fun calendar info stuff. It is not, it's far more exciting than what's the first day, the last day, and when's Thanksgiving. The Illinois School Board, they have certain requirements. We have to have 185 days in our calendar. That is made up of 176 student attendance days. A school district can have up to 4 professional learning days, and you have to include 5 emergency days. So there are certain requirements we have to make sure the calendar has. Our collective bargaining agreement with our certified staff, DEA, also has some requirements. They outline number of work days, when staff would report to work prior to the first day of school, number of paid holidays, and then, of course, getting input from the DEA. So we throw that into the mix as well. And speaking of that last item, we have a calendar committee, and that is made up of representatives of not just our certified and our ESP staff, but also from administrators, district, building, and department groups. And in years where we have significant calendar changes, we broaden that to stakeholder groups. Last year, we did have a number of more significant changes. So we met with PTO leaders. We surveyed over 500 district staff members. So there are times when we do that. But for many years, the calendar didn't change. And we found ourselves coming pretty far out of alignment with some neighboring districts and the needs of our community. Which brings us to how this year is going. We're only halfway through it. So this is just a little early observation. But the purpose of the changes from last year to this year were really to increase the amount of alignment we have, not just with District 214, the high school district, but our neighboring districts, such as District 25, 54, 57, 62. That's Arlington Heights, Schaumburg, Mount Prospect, Des Plaines. So we were able to do that. We were able to align our start date with District 214. And you might recall there was a creep every year. It crept up a couple days, and it was really early a couple years ago. Everyone, not just 59, was able to readjust for that. There was a leap year in there at one point too. We continue to have alignment with District 214 for winter and spring breaks. We did add the recognition of the Jewish high holidays, which brings us into alignment with 214 and neighboring districts. Not all neighboring districts, but some. We also brought ourselves into alignment with all of those districts I previously mentioned by creating a Thanksgiving break. We increased our institute days from 2 to 4, which goes perfectly with the conversations you were part of earlier in this meeting: curriculum development, piloting, professional learning for staff, math implementation, all of those items. Staff report to work 3 days before students now, as opposed to 2. And we balance the placement of where 3-day weekends fall based on some of those institute days to eliminate long stretches within the calendar. And as I mentioned, we had to put that election day in. So when something like election day goes in, that adds a day to the end of the year or somewhere. But those were the changes that were made last year to this year. There have been some positive, there's been positive feedback about those changes. The beginning of the year prep time to have 3 days with staff provided a much more opportunity for staff to have the time they need independently, for buildings to have the time they need as a building, and for us to come together as an entire district. The increased professional learning opportunities, as I'm sure you can imagine, is beyond needed for staff to get together and discuss and share out things like you heard tonight. Thanksgiving break was also very well received. And that only gets us up to today. We'll continue to watch how the rest of the year unfolds. But we've also already lived this calendar enough to find some improvement items. One of which is there were 4 consecutive school weeks that were 4-day weeks. It was that happened because of 2 holidays, which then went up to conferences, which went up to an institute day. So that naturally does not happen next year, but we also don't want that to be something that is just designed by chance. So that is something now that when I go to the committee, we'll make sure we make a note of to really count up how many consecutive 4-day weeks do we have. One of our goals was to provide to balance out some of those longer weekends. We did a good job. We can do even better next year. The conference week schedule is a little different than it was in the past. One of the things we learned during the pandemic was that we were able to reach even more families for whatever reason, whether it's work schedules or availability or childcare, by not only providing in person, but by providing video conferencing. There's still some work to make that even better. Again, we've only done that once. We'll have conferences coming up again, but that is another area that we will continue to improve. And like I said, we still have some year to go. So we will be tracking those items. Those were the highlights and the deltas for the changes coming to the new calendar. There is another challenge that is not new, that has a number of items connected to it that I want to share. And that is having both a traditional and a balanced calendar in one school district. So we have 14 schools on a traditional calendar and 1 school on a balanced calendar. The research piece that I would like to speak to does not support that a balanced calendar in itself increases student learning. But the first thing we have to do when we talk about a balanced calendar is make sure we are all understanding that a balanced calendar is not a year-round calendar. A year-round calendar is like a 12-month employee. You're going to work every day, every week, every month throughout the year. We do not have a year-round calendar in District 59. We have a balanced calendar. That means they have to meet those same requirements I mentioned earlier. They have 176 student days. They're just spread out a little differently. So with that balanced calendar, one item that research will share is that learning loss is not saved by starting early, because then you take a longer fall intercession and spring intersession. So actually, you just get a little bit of a head start, and then everybody else catches up. Another main challenge for us, or not for us, but that research shows, is that most balanced calendars are generated as a solution to overcrowding and cost savings, not necessarily to increase academic performance. But that's what the research shares. There are impacts on District 59 that I want to make sure the board is aware of. One is supplemental instruction, providing that intersession to get more of a year-round. That's very similar to offering summer school or ESY or summer quest on the traditional calendar. But with the intersession calendar, the last few years we have had difficulty staffing that. We have not been able to run intersession programming the same way we would be able to run summer programming. In District 59 specifically, we have 10 extra payroll calendars just for our balanced calendar. So there is a payroll calendar for building administrators. So every building administrator is on that calendar, except the building administrators on a balanced calendar. They need their own special calendar for 2 people. The office manager, just 1 person, they have their own special calendar. So these are very time intensive tasks to make sure are built into the system. And time is key because those things have to be in place in order to get payroll started and to get the year running. But that's just staff and payroll and adult problems. The other pieces are getting ready for that year to start. So there were some questions tonight about when you're piloting a curriculum and you want to order materials and you want to train staff, will we be ready? The 3 weeks for a balanced calendar to start compared to a traditional calendar is much bigger than 3 weeks in terms of a project management, making sure we're getting ready to start the year. District-wide curriculum reviews, professional learning opportunities, all of that summer learning, all of those times we want to get started. Some of those occur after the balanced calendar has already started. Assessment calendars are not fully aligned because some of the assessments on a balanced calendar occur earlier. Allocation opportunities. We talked about this in great deal with the recommendation that was presented to the board over the last few months. I can share from a human resource department that we have tried to share staff between 2 calendars. So if I need a psychologist, I need a psychologist on the balanced calendar. We've tried, it doesn't work. It also becomes, again, a management issue with payroll and counting calendar days and things like that. So for resource allocation, it ties our hands a bit. It also impacts kindergarten registration. We actually heard that this evening as well. But also, if a family is moving in and coming to kindergarten registration after school has already started, that can also prevent the amount of students or the start that you would want in a balanced program. Finally, a couple of reminders that the calendar, the balanced calendar in 59 has evolved over the past 20 years. It has not been the same calendar. As a matter of fact, over the pandemic, we all went on to a traditional calendar at one point. But really the most important thing to know about that evolution is that the only differences right now are the start date, 1 extra week for a fall break, and an extra week for spring break. That is the difference between the balanced calendar and the traditional calendar. Those 3 things. Today. So it has evolved. But most importantly, it continues to support inequities and inefficiencies in District 59.
Mm-hmm.
So the other improvements that we believe we made from last year to this year, we want to keep those going. It's only been half a year. You always want to implement something and review it over a couple of years. And then we would like to consolidate to 1 calendar for all of the efficiencies, whether it's staffing, allocation, professional learning, all of those items for next year as well. So finally, the next steps will be that the calendar committee will now get together, review all of these items. Leadership will then recommend a calendar and holidays at the February board meeting. Following that, we will right away get started on communicating those calendars out and doing our behind the scenes work for registration, payroll, all of those items. What questions do you
So-
have that I can
So-
support?
We are not talking about, are we talking about making it all traditional? And if we are making it all traditional, this is not like steps, which, sorry, there is a rumor going around out there that I'd like to dispel, that you're going to close Ridge if we change the calendar. So
This discussion is solely the annual discussion about calendars. We would like to consolidate to one calendar, and that would be bringing the one balanced calendar onto the traditional with 14 other schools, as opposed to the other way around.
so we'd have all of our schools on the same.
Let me ask this. Okay. A lot of times I look at things and say like, well, why are we doing it that way? You know, and I think the calendar with Ridge is one of those things of, you know, on my short time here on the board of why. Let me rephrase it. 20 years ago or so, when Ridge was opened and this calendar was introduced, what were the selling points to parents as to why you would want to register your kid at Ridge? Because look at our calendar versus looking at it now, because it does make sense. The kids are in school. I always thought they were in there longer before I was on the board, because that's the way it sounded, you know, and they're getting more education there because they start earlier and then, you know, et cetera, et cetera. But if they're in there the same amount of days, et cetera, why was it proposed to be, if we know, to begin with?
I appreciate that question. I can't speak to what the selling point was 20 years ago, or some of my teammates are welcome to join in. I can share, it has never been a year-round calendar. It has always been a balanced calendar. There was a time where it had a longer school day. There's been different start times, a lot of different pieces to that program. But in terms of the calendar,
and I wasn't part of developing that piece. I think an understanding I would have when Ridge opened, it was more than just now I think we often hear it's the balanced calendar is really the major difference. I do believe that original calendar piece of balance and the breaks throughout, but also the intersession component that went with that was, I believe, highly attended. So kids in a sense would be at Ridge an extended period of time if it was 2 to 4 to 5 weeks more per year because of that piece. But at the same time, when it opened, it was an 8-hour school day that no other school had. It had full day kindergarten. No other school had that. It had early release every week. No other school had that. So it's hard to say, well, it's balanced calendar now. When it originally opened, it had a combination of many things that looked very different from our other schools.
That intercession piece. So when the kids are on a longer fall break or Thanksgiving break or spring break, that's teaching during those periods when most of the kids are off?
Yes, similar to Summer Quest or summer school, optional opportunities, but those are dependent on being able to staff and actually register enough students to do that.
Are those free?
No.
So parents pay to have their kids in intercession if it's provided longer. Yeah. Okay.
I have two questions. One, were we competing years ago with maybe charter schools that we have in the district?
Again, I wasn't part of those discussions. I think there were assumptions that there was a Thomas Jefferson charter school that was looking into being established in the area. And some people have said, again, I wasn't there, that part of that answer was let's provide a different type of opportunity within the district. But I know there was years of work connected to that and really going on a different path that I think we hear from community members and we talk about ourselves. Those differences really aren't there like they once were. Problem-based learning, artists in residence, all of those pieces that over time have either for whatever reason shifted away from what's in place now.
And also, when did we because my daughter Josie, she's 27, she went to full day kindergarten at Rupley. When did we start full day kindergarten? And that was at Rupley. That was not at Ridge. She was in full day kindergarten.
Yeah, so I'm aware of a few schools that reallocated staff internally to provide some full day opportunities in the district, but we've been full day district wide. I think that was 14, 15-ish, less than 10 years. John Jay at one point had a full day program. I believe Rupley had some opportunities, but nothing consistent, whereas Ridge had from day one, full day K.
So I guess one thing, I don't expect you to answer this right now off the top of your head, but one thing I would be interested in just as context for this is I was shocked when you said the only 3 differences are the start date, the 1 extra week at fall break, the 1 extra week at spring break, if I got those right. The 1 extra week at winter and 1 extra week at spring.
No,
maybe.
winter's the same.
Winter's
it's just
the same.
Oh, it's fall,
start, fall,
and
spring.
Okay,
And it's
so
not,
start, fall, spring.
and it's that fall break is not connected to the traditional calendar's Thanksgiving break. So they get that as well on a balanced calendar.
Yeah.
Which, as Mr. Ludloff has shared, that was never the case back then as well. When 20 years ago, there
Right.
wasn't that.
Right.
So that made that more unique. So just as things have evolved, that's not as unique. Many of the districts in our area have evolved their traditional calendars into having a Thanksgiving type break. And when I did look on ISBE, I was just curious how many districts have balanced calendars. There are only 2 balanced calendars in Cook County. District 59 is one of them. District 62 is the other. There are only 33 that I counted in the state. There's over 350 elementary schools in the state, assuming that they're elementary schools.
Okay. So I guess my question that would just help me contextualize the evolution of this would just be like over, and I don't know, I would defer to you on what the right time period is for look back, but just to understand how the calendar sort of evolved, maybe over the last 10 years, 5 years, to get, like, I'm wondering if this just different start date, just different fall break and spring break, has it been that way for a number of years? Is that
Yeah,
very
I believe the
recent?
balanced idea has been from throughout, that there would be an earlier start date and allow for more extended breaks throughout the course of the school year, and about the same time, really at the same time, but have, like this year, it actually is about 2 weeks, the fall break, and then add another addition to spring break. And at times even winter break, I believe, was up to 3 weeks long, depending on the calendar. So,
Yeah.
and start dates. So that's
just-
been very consistent throughout
Got
the history of.
So
of-
it just doesn't seem to me like significantly different than our traditional calendar. And I'm not arguing one way or another for it against it. I'm just surprised because I thought it would be like very different in
Yeah.
structure. And
Yeah, I want to say, and again, and we can do the research, that at one point with those maybe additional breaks, we might have started earlier in July. I know as we transitioned to new leadership at, there was one principal for a very long time who had was a 12-month district employee when I started, I believe. So that worked a little better when we went to new administrators who work more of a 10 and a half, 11-month calendar. I think that's when we started to look at maybe shortening the balancing by at least a week. I can do some research on
yeah,
that.
just a little, I don't want you to spend hours on this, but like a snapshot of how the calendar evolved would be helpful.
Yeah, because a lot of times I think for other parents in any other area of our district that are considering bridge, is that calendar a convenience or an inconvenience? I think that's what I always think. Is it easy to have a child home when most of the kids are in school and vice versa? And for some parents, it's very simple. For some, it is not. So I'm trying to compare the two. I'll take, Forest View. If we have a Forest View family that goes on winter or spring break, that kid is home during spring break. The parents have to figure out what to do with that kid or stay at home or do whatever. A family at Ridge, when they go on their spring break, that family has the option to pay to have that kid continue to go to.
We don't offer the intercession anymore.
Oh, it's not offered anymore.
That's a good item to clarify. That doesn't happen during spring break, winter break. It doesn't happen during the breaks during the traditional calendar, just on the
To
fall.
clarify, though, we do the park district does provide services during those breaks, but that's independent. They do it on site, but it's independent through the park district.
Right.
So, can I clarify something on the intercession? So when we did intercession, there was a fee. Was that fee waived for free and reduced lunch? Families?
I want to say yes. That's my assumption that as we would do with other opportunities, I believe.
But a reminder on that piece, just anecdotally, that when we saw the demographic subgroups of Ridge, there was not even a subgroup of 20 that fell into that category. So I'm just thinking realistically, I don't know if anyone would have taken advantage of that. It's a small group to begin with.
And I don't know.
I
if-
was around when all this was going
Can-
on.
I'm going to add one thing done, Joe. Now, sorry, Mardell. So if the Park District offers it, they would not qualify for like tuition assistance, would they?
That would be independent of the Park District.
So that's
to
independent.
determine.
Then if we, okay, sorry, Mardell. I just want to make sure we got I
Okay.
clarified that. Okay.
All of this was discussed. It's maybe 5-6 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but it's a while ago. And it was basically because of Ridge. And the Ridge people wanted the balanced calendar, and it was offered to everybody else, and it was turned down by everybody else. Nobody else wanted the balanced calendar except Ridge. And that's the way it was. Now, I was under the impression that that's the way it was now. We're not on a balanced calendar. The rest of us, are we?
No, only
No.
one of our schools.
Only Ridge, and we're
Correct.
on the traditional.
Correct.
Yeah. So what's the big question? It was voted on.
We vote on the calendars annually. And so the current needs,
But why would we bring up a balanced calendar right now when nobody else in the rest of the district wanted it except for Ridge?
No, we're the question we're looking at is, correct me, I hope I have it right, is to convert Ridge from the balanced calendar.
But why? Why would we want to do anything to Ridge? They are a separate school. We've allowed them to remain. They have their own rules and their own voting and whatever they want, and they voted for balanced calendar. So why should we try to change them? They
Right, the
wanted it.
board at the time voted for a balanced calendar at the time, and now it's our turn to vote whether or not we want to continue that, and that's what we're discussing.
and we vote on both those calendars every year. And that's why we're talking tonight, because we need to vote again in February.
Well, if we vote to change from the balanced calendar to the regular calendar at Ridge, we're changing Ridge completely. Now, do you want to do that?
Well, that's what we're discussing. I think that's what we
that's
talked
what we're
about.
trying to
What
figure.
would
That's
be
what
the- what would be the
that's what we're looking at.
That's what we looked at today.
But what is the advantage of training?
Yeah, I think just a few of the things Ross mentioned from my perspective and things I'm responsible for. I think it's good to understand the perspective of things. Professional learning is a great example of implementing a district-wide professional learning plan on a different calendar creates issues, whether it's availability of staff to provide that. So most of our staff here at the district office are 10.5-month staff. They start when Ridge staff start. So I looked up earlier today. We ran 32 summer learning
But
sessions.
we're not forcing teachers to teach at Ridge.
No, we're not. But we're not.
But they need to
It's
be
also
trained on the
difficult to
curriculum they're using.
provide those professional learning opportunities because it's outside of our traditional
Well,
calendar.
If we can't provide Ridge with something that is outside of our timeline or whatever for the rest of the district, that's so be it. That's part of what.
Well, and I think
Ridge
we're
is Ridge.
pointing those things out
Yeah.
because we also recognize, and I've gotten feedback from Ridge staff. I've heard this a million times from Ridge staff. You forget about us. You don't plan for us. We do plan for Ridge, but trying to roll out a new curriculum before the coordinators of that curriculum are available or the trainers are available makes it difficult and can put Ridge in a more difficult position. Assessment wise, we have to work with iReady to set up a separate testing in the fall because they start testing when kids come back in July and August. We've done this for years, yet at the same time, it creates a different structure, different system, different expectations for one school, one calendar. And I think we're saying, hey, we've done this every year, but the reality is the board approves the calendars. They've approved 2 calendars. Let's have we haven't had discussions about it. And I think now the time is to have the discussions about those types of things. That's what, my perspective is.
And when I was reflecting on my presentation to the board, I thought it was fascinating how important it is that we align our calendar to District 214. It's very important to families. It's important to staff. We connect with, we do collaboration. That's a different district. So we ask our calendar to align to a different district. because families
what
need
number
their
did you
schools
say?
on the same calendar. And when we share that we need our schools within our own family on the same calendar, understanding that change can be difficult, but student needs, staff needs, hiring, all of these things that we're outlining are calling to, at this time, move into one calendar.
Yeah, and I
that's
think-
really why it now and not 10 years ago or 15 years
Because
ago.
we have one outlier school calendar wise, one school that operates completely different, and it puts different requirements, different strains, whatever you want to call it, on the operation of that one school. You know,
Or
so
the-
then
or the district as a whole, too, 'cause-
right? Yes, district as a whole, like Mr. Luloff was saying. So then we look at, or the way I look at it is, okay, you know, what is the, and I guess that goes back to my first question, what is the benefit of starting earlier? I don't know. If we switch, and the parent that is upset as to why did you switch my calendar, the response to that will be what? As far as they're in school for the same amount of hours, they're in school for the same amount of days, they're in school, you know, we're not reducing the educational opportunities for these kids. They're getting the same amount of class time, etc. It's just starting at a different date, because I don't like I said, I was under the impression that they were there longer, that they were there for longer school years and more time, etc.
I appreciate that approach to it. The other answer would be everything I shared from to speak to my calendar as a parent or a student, understandably. But as a public school district with this many facilities and resource allocation and being able to provide students with the staffing that they need, whether that's at the school with the balanced calendar or at the traditional school, that's something we were able to do 10 years ago, 15 years ago. The needs are very different now.
Yeah, I would add I know there's been lots of questions about enrollment
Are
and,
you
and
worried
processes
that we are not doing enough for Ridge? Is that part of what you're worrying about? Because Ridge has already got better scores than most of the other schools. Parents don't have to put their children there. They do it on their own venue because they want their children there. If we can't do all the things that we're doing in the other schools, the extra little deals and so forth, at Ridge, so what? They don't have to keep their kids at Ridge. They want them there.
Well, and I do want to clarify, this isn't about the choice program at whole. This isn't about funding salaries for additional teachers, capping class sizes, legacy enrollment. That's not what we're talking about.
Well, then what exactly do you want us to listen to?
What
I'm
I'm asking to listen to is the annual conversation about the school calendar, and that going into the 2023-24 school year, it would benefit District 59 as a whole in a number of significant ways to be on one calendar.
Can I ask a question? Jen, I see you in the back there. One thing Ross brought up was 10 additional payroll calendars for the balance, 10 additional payroll schedules.
Was that correct, Ms. Russo?
What is it? What is
Maybe
the,
11.
what is the amount of time spent on those additional calendars, and how difficult is that to maintain?
That microphone. And also before placeholder, Mr. Luloff, I want to go back to your point.
You know, you're going to come back to me.
Come back, yeah,
Yes.
after.
Sorry.
So once the calendars are created, they are created. To quantify the time, it takes several hours, days that I work with the Human Resource Department to prepare those calendars.
Okay, so it's a significant time commitment, but not extreme time commitment.
I don't know how to quantify that.
Like,
To me,
it takes up half your day to adjust for these kind of things.
we spend a significant amount of time working on the calendars because it's preparing each one. It's all the checks and balances to make sure that everything is in place. It feels like we spend months together working on it.
Okay, so
And there's there's also the student information system and those calendars that are impacted as well. So from multiple departments.
Yeah, there's another there is another component to not just the amount of time it takes to create additional calendars and again, some of those are for one employee, but when they have to be completed by. So everything then backs up, which means you're kind of starting the race already. Trying to, I mean, that's probably how many total calendars? 40? Okay.
Mhm.
So the percentage of that, how many calendars for one program compared to how many programs we're talking about compared to buildings,
Mhm.
that's, I think, where you get the significance of time efficiency and
Yeah.
energy.
We have some calendars that are for one person.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So my comment in connection to enrollment, I know we've heard questions of pieces we've put in place, like after the school year starts. So oftentimes a new family, a current family, we get to August 15th, school's about to start, and well, I think I want to attend Ridge. We've closed Ridge enrollment once Ridge opens, and the purpose of that is we can't have kids miss 3 weeks of school.
Right.
Because they can't make up that time.
Mhm.
They can't recapture that. And with the balanced calendar, they won't recapture it.
Mhm.
This option, in a sense, at least with the way the current structures are, would bring balance in a sense to that because we'd be on the same page. So if a new family or someone wants to shift, we're all on the same timeline. When you're talking end of July, I've seen this, I've talked to those families. It's a new family, it's a current family. They're not thinking about school enrollment. School starts in August. So in the past, yes, 3, 4, 5 years ago, we would allow kids to enroll.
Mhm.
As we looked at that, we thought it was inappropriate for kids to miss that much school.
Mhm.
And the reality is, if Ridge is your path, the next year, apply and enroll. So I know those questions have come up and are perceived, at least the way I hear it, as we're trying to halt enrollment at Ridge. No, we're trying to create consistency.
Sure.
We want kids in school the same amount of time. We want kids to have the same process in place to enroll at different schools. And we've tried to implement those pieces. Outside of this year, Ridge's enrollment has been super consistent at 250 some kids every year, almost from day one.
Do they have the same number of hours total in the balance?
So when we moved to full day kindergarten, we had added 30 minutes to the school day in the district through a negotiations process. We also balanced Ridge's school day to the rest of the district. It used to be 8. Now it's the
Traditionally,
same.
we have
They
perhaps
start
even
earlier,
more
but they end
time
earlier.
than
Start
that.
earlier, end earlier.
What's the big problem? I mean, they're happy with the balance.
Wait a minute,
Like-
Margot, I
Right.
want to clarify something real quick, okay?
Yeah.
So, I thought I put it on. Okay, so we have kids that move into the district all the time. We let they come into our schools. I just want to clarify what the difference is. If they come in late and they want to they move here and they want to go to Ridge, what's the difference between them coming in late for that or coming in for a traditional calendar?
Yeah. So
right?
if let's use an example of someone moves here August 15th and hears from their neighbor, hey, school starts tomorrow. But there's this other school. I want to attend Ridge. Ridge is in week 4. They've had 15 days of school or 12 days of school based on our structure. So 2.5 weeks that students missed. They can start day 1 at John Jay, or they can start day 13. And you think, what's 2.5 weeks? But that's a significant amount of time. So in that situation, we'd say Ridge's enrollment's closed, even if there's space, and you should attend your boundary school.
And that's because when they moved here, we're assuming they were in another school doing that time, but they weren't in a balanced calendar.
So
That
if
time
a student
counted.
moves here December 1st and says, I want to attend Ridge. Well, again, looking at, I was checking our winter benchmarking. So things do balance out over the course of the year, but Ridge right now is additional days of instruction, even though we're assessing at the same time. So if a kid starts at Ridge, they missed a week. They might have missed 2 weeks. Again, if we get into the spring semester, it's much closer to balanced. But at the same time, we've been very focused. If we say no to you as a new parent in August, it's completely inappropriate to say, but it's okay for you because it's April. So maintaining that consistency.
So looking at just the facts, Ridge this year starts how many weeks before all other schools? 3 weeks
3
before.
weeks.
Their start time is how much earlier than the other schools? They start earlier.
The start
like the day, like the actual class.
About an hour.
They start an hour earlier every day. They get out an hour earlier than all the other schools. Would that stay the same? The start and end times.
This conversation is only about the calendar. It's not about start end times
So-
or any of the other programming
Yeah.
components.
Just when they actually start school, and then they end school on the same date that all the other schools end.
Yes, and currently that is
And they don't presently do that.
they do presently end on the same day of
Mhm.
school as the
But
traditional
they don't
calendar.
presently start on the same
Right.
day.
Correct.
Mhm.
So they get 3 weeks or more schooling because they start 3 weeks.
No, they do 3 additional weeks at the beginning, and then they take additional breaks, time off during the year.
during the year.
They get the same
so-
same number of
So
class
what's
days.
the problem? I mean,
But it's
The logistics.
Logistics part of it, really.
And
Logistics
I would
is a difficult for
actually
the
like
district.
to raise just another point that honestly did not occur to me fully until we had this conversation, but just thinking about, we say it's only the people who choose it. I think what we're failing to think about
Mhm.
is, are there families in the district who cannot choose
Yeah.
it because of the fact that their childcare needs would be blown up by it?
Mhm.
And I'm thinking about those families that have a high school student in 214 and they have an elementary school student. And in any of the other, 9 elementary schools, those vacations would all align
Mhm.
so that their high schooler could take care of their elementary school student. So why would they consider Ridge if that would mean paying for
Mhm.
3 weeks of childcare in the middle of the year
Yeah.
where their childcare is not available? And it seems to me, for many parents in our district, and especially in a district where we're 50% roughly free and reduced lunch,
Mhm.
that entire 50% is completely disincentivized
Mhm.
from choosing Ridge because of the childcare cost of those 3 weeks.
Sure. I mean, I agree. I that was kind of I agree with that. The what would the argument be, if there is one, in favor of starting early from an educator's perspective of what it, I mean, because it's, like I said, it's the same amount of time. They're not getting any advantage.
I
other
think
than-
the initial and still is that summer break.
Mhm.
You know, you end
Sure.
June 1st. It's shorter.
It's still
So
fresh
you
in
have-
your mind.
You have less time to
Less tablet
transition.
time.
Yeah.
If I could add to Mrs. Lang's comment, it impacts everyone,
Mhm.
not just families in a program or families that would be constrained. It impacts everyone, because when I have to hire on behalf of the district a psychologist or a nurse or an administrator full time that I would like to be able to split at a very small school and also have at Grove to provide extra support, hands are tied. I can't do
Sure.
that.
Mhm.
That adds additional staffing, that takes additional tax dollars. Whenever one of our schools is not in alignment, we have to outweigh the pros versus
Mhm.
the cons. So I
Mhm.
think what you're hearing is hopefully just factual information from myself sharing from the leadership team, that the pros are not outweighing
Yeah.
the long list of cons for
Yeah.
23, 24. We
Right.
do this annually.
Right.
And I think that's, to me, the important takeaway is
Yeah.
that things have evolved. The current needs, the current resources and structures are where they are now. And we believe that this would improve not just one program, the whole district. The amount of time to get ready for this Ad Center's start of year is 3 weeks early.
Mhm.
We don't get rich, tidy, and then start
Mhm.
working on the rest. It offsets everything,
Sure. Mhm.
which has an impact on everything.
does it cost the district more because they start 3 weeks earlier than the rest of the schools?
It can, in terms of some staffing pieces, absolutely.
Because as far as I'm concerned, Ridge can do whatever they want to do, because no, we are not forcing anybody to go to Ridge. They choose to go to Ridge. However, if there's time start and finish at the beginning and the end of the year causes the district more money, that I can see where you could change them.
Well, I think the piece is if one school is doing something independently that is impacting other schools, that's different than something that would only impact them.
Well,
Like
how is it impacting other schools?
some of the items I had shared earlier.
Because they don't have, they can go to other schools or they can go to Ridge. We are not forcing them to go to Ridge.
Our ability as a district to run and manage those
Unless
facilities.
it's costing us more money, then I can
sure.
understand it.
But wouldn't that be like busing? Because
Again, that would
there's never bus routes.
that would not impact the calendar. We're just talking about the
so,
calendar.
sorry.
We're not talking. As a matter of fact, we're not even talking about Ridge technically. We're
Yeah.
talking about a balance. You may have noticed I only said it once. We're talking about a balanced calendar and a traditional calendar. So if we came and said, okay, we want Rupley to be the balanced calendar and Ridge to be a traditional calendar, and families can choose that, that is not what we're discussing tonight. We're discussing actually very focused calendars, 15 sites, 14 to 1.
Yeah.
This is leadership telling you from our experience on behalf of my representing this work that this is where we're at. And we know what the target is and what the needs are and where we want to go.
Yeah.
And again, I think what's really important is it's an annual commitment because we come, and that's a good thing because last year we realized the traditional needed some improvements, and there aren't always guarantees in life that things are going to work out. The most feedback I got about the Thanksgiving break was, I don't want that Thanksgiving break. I don't want that Thanksgiving break. 2 days after Thanksgiving break, oh my gosh, don't ever get rid of the Thanksgiving break. So sometimes we just need to, we need to try something on. Look at the facts, look at the ROE and or the ROI, and move forward.
I think one thing that we do need to consider is an opportunity loss, and I won't say we can't monetarily put money to it, but it's time. Where, like as Tom has pointed out, where we have to get ready. I readied early up for testing purposes before the rest of the people. So we're spending time setting it up for just Ridge, and then we go to set up for the other schools instead of setting up all the schools at one time. Janet talked about an extra 10 payroll schedules they need to set up. That is a time commitment that takes them away from possibly doing other things that can benefit. I think one thing that was brought up was the training for the staff, where some of our staff that does that training doesn't even start until after Ridge teachers are in the schools in session. So those teachers are not being trained on the new English language arts curriculum, and they won't be trained on that. They want to be trained on that. They will have to take a day off. They'd have to take a day to come in for training. We have to provide substitute for that day, which then becomes a monetarily cost. So there are costs associated, but I think there's more of unseen cost and time commitment from the district.
Yeah.
So I mean, and that's the perspective I'm looking at. I mean,
So what is your solution to make?
I don't know. That's why I'm waiting. I mean, Ross, I think the district right now is proposing a single calendar for the entire district.
If there's something
But I
that
want to see that
has to be
calendar because we have
done.
not seen the dates on it yet. I'm assuming
Sure,
it's going to be
the-
sent out to us before the meeting to look it over, correct?
purpose
So
of
I
this
wanted
dis-
just to give Ross a little relief. We've learned and we're growing together, and we understand that the calendar is an annual board action item. And so before Ross goes and works and spends a lot of time with a group of teachers and staff and administrators to really build the calendar for next year, as we do every year, we wanted to get some clarity, because the last thing I want them to do is to go spend a lot of time preparing something for the board not to approve it. So we wanted to get some parameters that he could then take back. The calendar at Ridge coming in as someone new last year was one of the first things I heard about. It is one of the things that I think collectively sets them further apart, and it creates a division. And I think these past few months have really shown us a division. This is one of those things that I think maybe it would allow the program to be seen for the program instead of under these other things that create all of these other divisive inefficiencies that add extra work to the system that ultimately creates tension between those that are living it over at that school versus the other schools and the administration center that has to support it.
Mhm.
And it's no one's fault, and it's not pointing fingers, and it is not about the program. The board said, and in December, we are going to let's pick a problem and fix it.
Mhm, mhm.
We just identified these are the
Mhm.
things our system feels. It does come down to some monetary aspects.
Mhm.
It comes down to a lot of time and efficiencies. It also comes down to creating unity and consistency, opportunities for collaboration and connection amongst students, amongst staff. If we can explore that and move that one step in that direction, I would like the opportunity to do it.
So
Thank you.
wanna-
Thank you, Dr. Brejan. And the timeline is critical because
Right.
while we could do it, pushing off, having more discussion in February, pushing off to March, it gives us that one less month to get ready to support our students and our families and our staff.
So what are you asking us for? To change the start time and the end time at Ridge?
Nope.
Well, then what? I don't know what we're.
The calendar.
We're looking
Wants
to,
make it the same as all the other schools.
the district is asking us if we can have one calendar for all
Changing the
schools.
start time and the end time. That's
Once-
exactly
one-
what I said.
Yeah. We're looking, the district is asking us for guidance on, do we prepare one calendar for all schools, or do we prepare two calendars for all schools and then one calendar for Ridge? That's what the
If we
district
were
is
to
asking us.
change it so
And
it
they're
was the
asking for
same,
direction
could
from
we
us.
Still have a balanced calendar?
From what the
No.
district is proposing, then no, there'll be not a district
We have
calendar.
the-
There will not be a balanced calendar, yes.
No, it wouldn't be the same if we did that.
So does anybody have any questions or anything else want to add?
I just don't quite understand what we're asking for them to give up, or what we want to take away, or what we want to give
We're
up.
not voting on it
We're not
tonight.
voting on it. We're just having a
We're
discussion on
having
it.
a discussion.
We're not voting on it, but
We're gonna see
we're
some
giving our suggestions and
background.
so forth.
All schools next year would have the same first day, elementary
Same
and junior
first
high.
day.
They have elementary and junior high will have the same first day of school. They'll have the same breaks. They'll have the same last day.
And they don't have it now.
Correct.
Right.
Okay.
Only Ridge is different now.
We're not going to change the staff. We're not
How
going
would
to,
it affect the Ridge people, other than the fact that they'd be starting and stopping at different times?
That's
Would
it
affect
for
them?
this conversation. That's the only
That's it.
impact.
that's
Well,
only
the
thing.
intercession pieces.
The intersection.
Yes.
We don't have people to do those anyway. I'm just curious how this winter break, what the feedback is on that, starting the 23rd and coming back today, how they like that.
Well, and some of that is just the way the
District
calendar
214.
falls,
Mhm.
whether those who celebrate a holiday, it's at the beginning or the end.
Yeah.
Next year, that would naturally look a little different. And
I am curious though, because 214's calendar is already set. It's available out on their website, and they are going up to Friday, December 22nd,
Right.
2023.
We're not going back to work.
So our board would need to collectively say, is that alignment more important and we want to follow suit, or do we want to shift that? That again, I think those parameters or what you are open
Yeah.
to is really helpful for us, because right now we're
Yeah.
prioritizing alignment with 214.
Yeah, and that's what we've historically have always done to
Yeah.
make it easy for the families. We follow what 214.
And more so in the recent years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
yeah,
The-
there are a couple districts also, 54 and 25 that are now publishing theirs.
Mhm.
And we're also seeing some that are taking that Friday and try. That's what the committee will. I will now go to the committee and say,
Yeah.
okay, let's continue to make this
What
better.
are 24 and 50 and 54
25.
and 25 doing?
They're looking at that winter break as opposed to going all the way through to that Saturday, and then it starts where they have non-attendance on Friday, and then that has to go somewhere else.
Was this year election day the only day where there was it was like an odd day off, or it was just like a Tuesday, or was that just election day? 'Cause I know that was kind of tough.
Well,
one of the high
that was a new holiday added
Mhm.
by the
Sure,
state
yeah, right.
to our calendar. There were 3 new days. There was that day, and then the 2 Jewish high
Sure.
holidays.
In the middle of the week.
Correct.
Right.
And that also is just where that falls.
Sure.
Next year, only one of those holidays falls within the Monday, Friday, and I believe it's on a Monday.
Mhm.
So
Okay.
yeah, that feels a little different. And how that paired into 4 consecutive weeks.
And we didn't used to have a holiday on election day.
Correct.
No.
Correct.
I mean, that's something new.
Yes,
Yeah.
yep.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate
Do you have enough direction from us then?
I believe so.
Our,
Thank you.
our New Year's resolution is to
I
ask
would
more
like
questions.
to I would like to make sure that we hear from all board members, though. I think that's important.
I didn't hear. She wanted to hear from all of us what we thought. Oh.
Daisy, you have any feedback, thoughts?
You got anything you'd like to say?
Green.
Well, if it does make it easier for you guys, I think I would go with that as well. So
Thank you. I appreciate that feedback. I think that's what we need to understand in terms of this. And again, we present our day-to-day to you and what we see and what we observe so the board can make the most informed decision possible. So if there are, we know this is going to be a tight turnaround for the February approval so that we can move forward with kindergarten registration. So we'll get it to you as quickly as possible. And then if there's questions, review, concerns, please make sure you share that with us so that we can be prepared for February.
Very on like the board update, could we just have like 4 bullet points of start date, end date, winter break date is this date, like class starts at X time, class ends at X, just like the
draft dates for next year to start. Is that what
like
you're
what's-
asking?
Or what's the current?
The current?
Yeah, for Ridge, just so we know, like.
Oh,
so we could do a comparison.
Right.
Yes.
This is
Yes.
what-
We can absolutely provide that.
And also all the calendars are available on the website as well. You will see an ELC calendar that's not voted on separately, but they have slightly different needs based on their age group. So we thought it would be a helpful communication tool to make that specifically for those families, not to confuse anyone if they go there and see 3 calendars. Absolutely. The first team that's anxiously awaiting the board action in February is the kindergarten registration and communication piece of it, as well as Mrs. Rousseau in the back.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. I haven't signed it yet. 8.0 action items. 8.01 approval of crisis go application. Can we have a motion, please?
I'll make the motion. Be it resolved that on the 9th day of January 2023, CCSD59 Board of Education approves the purchase of the Crisis Go application in the amount of $15,300 per year.
Anybody have questions or comments?
So when it's per year, is it every year renewal then? It's not like a 3-year
It's a-
contract or something. Sorry, Ron. Now you don't have a microphone.
I thought I was going to get away with not saying a thing. Yeah, it's for 3 years.
So it's for 3 years, but do we have an option then to renew on the end of that, or we'd renegotiate it? Or
I'd renegotiate.
Okay.
Okay, let's vote.
All right. Roll call, please.
Lang.
Aye.
Mencia.
Aye.
Petrielli, aye. Reed.
Aye.
Sager.
Aye.
Schumacher.
Aye.
And Espino.
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Okay. Item 8.02, approval of fitness room flooring.
Be it resolved that on the 9th day of January 2023, the Community Consolidated School District 59 Board of Education approves replacing the fitness room flooring with E-Core through Direct Fitness for all 3 junior high schools in the amount of $92,360.62.
I'll second. Courtney.
Just to let you know, we had at the discussion back in December, it was for approximately $45,000. There was a number mistake in the proposal, correct?
Correct. Mr. Tiarina reviewed it and made sure that they were giving him the right information.
Yeah. And then we discussed the facility and we were okay with the change in price. Facility and Finance Committee. So any questions concerning that change in price?
So this will not exceed $92,360, right? You are authorized for $92,360. Any work has to fall under that amount, right?
Correct.
Roll call.
Petrelli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
And Lang?
Aye.
And the motion passes.
Item 8.03, approval of the biannual review of board policies, which we discussed earlier today. Do we have a motion?
Be it resolved that the Board of Education reviewed policy 7.180, prevention of the response to bullying, intimidation, and harassment, and 7.70, attendance and truancy at the January 9th, 2022 Board of Education meeting, adopted this 9th day of January 2023 by a roll call vote as follows.
Do we have a second?
I'll make the second.
Any additional questions or comments? Roll call, please.
Petrelli, aye. Reed?
Aye.
Sager?
Aye.
Schumacher?
Aye.
Espino?
Aye.
Lang?
Aye.
And Mencia?
Aye.
The motion passes.
9.0 superintendent reports. Dr. Bresnahan.
All right, so I will give my report, but I do want to mention that starting next month, we are going to be working to create kind of a written handout to coincide with our oral reports. We think that having a printed, just bulleted list for you of the topics that each of us presents would be helpful and good reminders, because we really rely on these reports to build knowledge from month to month, and sometimes there's a long time between board meetings. So we're going to add that as just an additional support as we go through the oral pieces
idea.
of this.
Attach it to the agenda.
Yeah, we'll have it at your place settings. We'll do it the day of so that it is the most current, and then we'll have it printed and at your place settings for the night of our meetings. And that's a practice I implemented in my last district, found it really helpful, and discussed it with SLT this morning. And we think that that would be good, so that there's a lot of information coming at you and just build continued collective knowledge.
Not only that, it will help if your computer is not working like mine has not been, because
Yes.
I'm not getting any messages.
Yes,
And
that
I guess
one also.
a request for those of us who like to take notes, can you link it even, or just send us an
Email with
electronic
it.
copy too, so we can
Yes.
easily
well,
copy?
yes.
I think it'll be attached to the meeting minutes.
We will do it ahead of time so that you can take notes simultaneously. It is not something that's going to be listed in the public agenda, however. So
That's fine.
Yes.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you.
Perfect.
We'll include the notes later.
The minutes.
The
Yes.
You'll
And
be able-
it'll probably help with minute taking as well. Too. Just the bullets would be fine. Yeah. Okay. So just briefly, as a follow-up, we've had some time since our December meeting. So we have a committee of the whole coming up in January, at the end of January, January 23rd. And so as we've really taken some time to reflect and to regroup and try to really think about what our next steps are and what can we achieve in 23 and 24 in terms of our strategic plan and our goals. We wanted to really be, I wanted to be very clear and have very transparent dialogue that the plan that was voted down in December was a plan. It was a plan. The goals and the vision and our values as identified in our strategic plan have not changed. And I feel that collectively, and so I want to make sure that we are continuing to work within those guidelines and parameters so that as we create plans and strategies and recommendations, that we are in sync moving forward. So we'd like to go a little more in depth about strategic plan year 2 at the January 23rd committee of the whole meeting, and pairing it really with our identified areas through our equity journey. So we looked at those 8 tiles. I think they were really good data points for us to focus in on, as well as for us to use as kind of benchmarks in our progress. So just to recap, the changes that we took for this current year, for 22-23, we took steps forward to address some of the inequities that we knew were happening. So this year, we eliminated our multi-grade classrooms. We had to shift a program in order to do that, but we were able to take that step forward. We were able to expand our afternoon opportunities at our early learning center, as well as try to address some of the transportation needs for our earliest learners. And then we did a pretty major overhaul in terms of schedules at both our junior highs to allow for win time and core block hours for our academics, as well as our elementaries, so that we can ensure that we were in compliance for physical education and allowing time for teachers to collaborate with common plan time. So looking forward to 23 and 24, I've been reflecting on what can we do that is outside of the more comprehensive plan that we moved away from in December. So the things that we really want to focus in on for 23 and 24, which we're already in 23, which is rapidly moving us towards already planning for our next year, school year. So we want to really look, one item is our calendars. We think we can maximize some efficiencies, we can bring some more unity, we can really take our time to focus our energies if we're able to make some movement in terms of the calendar, as well as really prioritize the implementation of our ELA curriculum, which is going to deeply and widely impact every teacher K through 5, as well as our ELA teachers 6 through 8. So I think prioritizing that, which I've heard loud and clear, is a strong priority. This will help us achieve that. We also want to start looking at transportation. It was one of our first tiles that we looked at in terms of areas for improvement. And I think, Mardell, to your point about what additional costs are we spending and where are we spending them, and what else could we do to alleviate some of our transportation issues, we want to start engaging the board in conversations around that at our committee of the whole. And then lastly, looking at our resource allocation, which we are already well underway. That's class sizes, that is number of sections, that's looking at where are our singletons that we really talked about. How do we begin to address some of those? We have many of them. We have just preliminarily, I think I counted at least 3 schools that are going to be under 250 again next year, if not more. So when I talk about resource allocation, I also want to ensure that we're looking at our dual language programming and looking at how we can further consolidate to maximize the impact of that program, as well as hearing from our Polish dual language audit and the results from that, so that we can start to consolidate, streamline, and maximize the impact of those needs-based programs, as well as the dual language programs that are not needs-based, but are actually optional opportunities for students. So those are really the areas that we've identified that we think we can make some movement on in 23-24. But also recognizing that there is still a need for long-term solutions. When we talk about facility usage, when we talk about enrollment numbers, when we talk about really broad, equitable access to programming, we're going to have to look at some long-term solutions. And maybe there were components of the plan that we liked, maybe there were components of the plan that we didn't like, but I'd like to begin to revisit where we can to get some clear direction on how we move forward so that we can still achieve our goals, even though the original plan was not selected, we can still make movement towards achieving them for our students. Mm-hmm. So stay tuned for that for January and be ready to engage. It will be a conversation. My hope is that we really clearly identify where our values lie so that we can have clarity of decision making as opposed to the push and pull of what's happening in our community, and really looking at what is our long-term vision and goal and how do we best get there. That is all I had for my oral report. I'll turn it over to SLT.
I'll jump in. Similar to last month, this is our last week of winter benchmarking. And really this week is focused on makeups for kids who weren't present when we completed in December, and also the assessment of Spanish reading. So we're already starting to consolidate that data and preparing a report for the board in February. One of the main pieces we'll share very similar to what we did in the fall, but showing fall to winter growth or lack of growth, but then also really focusing on individual or groups of students, how their progress is towards their typical growth, which would be like a year's growth in a year's time, and stretch growth, which is really that important piece to close those gaps. So that'll be the focus of our report in February. And we're also working as a team to finalize our next Institute Day, which is in February 17th. So planning that piece out, district-wide institute. It's our third of 4 that are in the calendar this year. And I'll pass it over to Susan.
All right. Well, I think I think we're good with literacy for tonight. We had a very thorough presentation. I don't think I can add more than what the team shared. More to come next month and the month following. Math is ongoing. We're in year 2 of our implementation plan. So we've been meeting with all of our principals to analyze the walkthrough data, the student assessment data, and we're really focusing on engagement around using the resource and using assessment. That's our primary focus right now with it. And we're going to head into our next round of data collection in February with the teams. We also have some exciting family nights coming up for math. We actually have a representative from IM, Illustrative Math, who's coming in to work with our schools. We're going to have family nights at Friendship, Grove, and Holmes for all of those clusters. And I will put all of these family night dates in the board report this week. There's quite a few things going on in January and February. Social science has finished their phase 1 of looking at their literacy, looking at their standards, prioritizing standards, and creating beliefs. And this week, we're going to be sending out surveys to staff at elementary and junior high to determine the capacity and interest in piloting resources or assessing our current resource. We're anticipating we're probably going to get more junior high interest, but we'll see what comes from the elementary survey. And once we get that, we're going to begin the pilot process like we have done with literacy, with social science. Multilingual programming. So world language teachers are piloting beginning now as well. As I've shared before, we have not had universal resources for Spanish, for French. And so we have Spanish for Spanish speakers, Spanish and French, all beginning pilots. They're going to start now and they're going to continue. So we will most likely have discussion around what we'd like to adopt in March, April, most likely. I'm thinking more realistically, probably May, June, finishing it all up so we get the feedback from staff. I will continue to update the board in reports as well as we do that work. We're awaiting the results from the Polish dual language audit. We're supposed to be getting those this month, so probably in the next week or so. And BPAC meeting is coming up on January 31st. That date will be in there as well. Kindergarten information nights were mentioned, or kindergarten registration, I should say, was mentioned, but we're going to continue with our second year of doing kindergarten information nights for incoming families to District 59. Those will be in February. So these are all the things that we're currently planning. Also, Dr. President had mentioned some of the changes that we made this year, including updates to consistent junior high schedules. We have been working with staff, gathering feedback and meeting, working with building principals very, very diligently on this. And we're planning some revisions for next year to alleviate the overlap with PE, which caused concerns. We're also constructing a schedule that will allow for WIN to happen at the same period, which will allow for more flexibility in use of intervention time, as well as, I think I'm losing the line. Oh yeah, looking at our electives and perhaps seeing how we can fit that in so that they're on a daily as opposed to a rotation. This is all from feedback from students and staff that we've been collecting and observations we've been making. So I'm going to be meeting with a smaller elective group actually in the next 2 weeks to begin talking about our elective programming at our junior highs, our structures and our offerings to make sure that we have a common vision and can move forward to make sure that we have great offerings for our students in those areas as well. So that's more on the programming side, which is really also really important. AVID continues, and we're going to have lots of AVID nights starting for recruitment and also for family nights for parents to come in. All these dates that are going to happen in January and February, I will list in the board update this Friday because we have been finalizing it all the last couple of weeks, then we had break.
Do teachers have access to the tutoring that was supposed to go along with this?
So we do not have tutors in AVID. We have tried to recruit tutors. We have tried to partner with universities, and we currently do not have tutors in the program.
So where does that leave teachers?
So teachers actually have opportunities to use a tutoring style process within AVID. They can use the tutorial work within their groups, within their class. But we also knew that when we began that tutoring was not going to be up and running immediately, and that we had to really work on getting the components of AVID in place. So there's pieces of the curriculum that teachers are getting used to that tutoring is part of as well. But the tutoring piece is separate from the actual curriculum. So we've been working with the teams. We've also been working with principals on problem solving ways around that. One solution was looking at student tutors within the school And now we're looking at perhaps some opportunities with some staff that might want to work within their spare periods to tutor. And we're looking at kind of filling that in as like sort of a sub within the school day. So we're continuing to problem solve it, but I do want to share that showcase schools across the nation for AVID are struggling to get tutors in this current job market. We haven't given up. We're going to continue to plug away and problem solve around it, but it's something we knew would be sort of like as we go to evolve the program. There's many, many pieces to AVID that we're still getting sort of foundational knowledge for staff. Yeah. It's been a struggle.
Me, but I can't work in the district.
You can volunteer in the district, though.
As Dr. Bresnahan shared, the Human Resource Department is already starting resource allocation work for next school year. Following the December board meeting, we are still going after certain areas of equity within the staffing plan to try to make sure that we are getting closer to that finish line. So that work starts with us just organizing and rolling up student enrollment as we know it today, talking to departments, talking to building administrators, with the goal being staff that will need to be moved because let's say a section of 2 is moving to a section that has 3 teachers. Any type of move that's happening at some of our schools, and there are a number, including teaching assistants and interventionists to support everything we've been discussing. We want to have that information and communicate it out in the most timely manner as possible. So we are working on that. Extended school year and some requests, leadership postings have been made. So I know that is starting, that staffing process will be starting internally pretty soon as well.
We've contractually, we're going to try and get them done by the end of the year so everybody knows where they're going, right?
Absolutely. That is what's outlined in the certified CBA, but we always strive to get it out as soon as we have that. I don't want to give a projected hopeful date, but we certainly aren't waiting now that we know the direction. We're going to still go after those targets in other means.
In regards to goal 2, we have also been reviewing that student growth for typical growth and for stretch growth to see if students are closing the gap. So we have been doing very close studies with key groups, with our interventionists, with our representatives from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt, who supply System 44 and Math 180 Tier 3 intervention resources, to look at the implementation within our district, as well as student usage, as well as the progress our students are making. So we're combining all of these data sets to see how are our interventions being utilized at different levels, and how effective are they for students who in particular need to make sure that they are closing the gap as a result of their intervention progress. So that is one of the pieces we're focusing on right now. We will be meeting with our instructional leaders next week to really dig into students who are performing 2 or more grade levels below to see what groups of students we can hone in on, study further, and make adjustments to. So as part of a data review cycle, we always try to make sure that we are coming back, reviewing, and making adjustments as frequently as possible. With us having new intervention resources this year, mid-year is a key time for us to look at what's working well, what might not be working well, and where we can make changes now rather than waiting. So that is in the works, as well as for student wellness. We are very much focused on culturally, linguistically responsive teaching and learning at the moment. So in the last 2 years, we have focused many professional learning sessions on this topic, which is all about validating and affirming home and Indigenous culture of our students for the purpose of building and bridging to a successful culture of academia and mainstream society. So really, we want to recognize and affirm who our students are and what they bring to our classrooms and our schools, and ensure that they understand the situational appropriateness of our schools so that they can be successful in learning. That really requires a skill set for our staff and a mindset for our staff to approach students where they are and help them grow. We've had sessions that focus on responsive classroom management, responsive academic vocabulary, responsive language, and our next PLT as a district that's coming up January 25th is a focus on responsive learning environments. That's going to conclude a 5-part study in cultural and linguistically responsive teaching and learning. And as a next phase in that journey and that professional learning, we will be launching coaching cohorts at our schools. So interested staff will be able to work with staff from the Center for Culturally and Linguistically Responsive Teaching and Learning to enhance their practices within their classroom, engage in feedback cycles, and become CLR teachers.
Well, the biggest thing I'm probably going to be working on happened today. It's when Janet came into my office and said, "Hey, what about that FY24 budget?" So, yeah, that's going to be our first major thing. Thanks, Janet. The other thing we've been looking at pretty adamantly throughout this school year, and we did share in finance facilities, was the transportation routes. Currently, we're spending $7.1 million in transportation alone. Which is high, and we're expecting at least another 10% increase in costs, give or take. A lot of our districts are working together to talk to see how to mitigate costs because we're all feeling it. And let's face it, the state does not always come through when it comes to any sort of payments. So that's going to be the burden on the taxpayer. The other thing is organic life with food service. We're still working on that contract for next year. That's another $2.6 million contract that it was before. And we don't know what's going to occur in terms of the increase, in terms of, we're anticipating CPI, but we're trying to work it out. I'll just say it like that. We don't want to just kind of say CPI and be done with it. That's what we're here for, is negotiate. But we're also looking at additional opportunities with organic life. And then otherwise, you guys have heard it all. Like today, it was really nice to be kind of quiet. So I'll be back at that. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you. I'm going to Patty. 10.0 new and continuing business and announcements.
I just want to announce that tomorrow we are having our first Superintendent Student Council. So tomorrow we are leaving the table set up like this, and SLT, as well as all of our junior high student council governing board, executive board will be joining us. So 3 to 4 students from each of our 3 junior highs, as well as their facilitators for student council, their sponsors will be coming, and the 3 junior high principals. And we're going to treat them to lunch, and we're going to have a little informal meeting just to educate them a little bit. We're going to then also have an opportunity to hear from our students. What are their needs? What are their topics of interest? What are the things they'd like us to see, to see improved in our district? And then we're going to take them on a tour of our ad center. So very excited. My hope is that we do at least one more of those this year. And my long-term vision is that we go to each school and visit each other's student councils, and then have one culminating activity here at district office every year.
Sure.
So
good.
Stay tuned for a report on how that turns out.
Very nice.
Thank you, Dr. Bertrand. Ross, 11.0 FOIA requests.
We have supported 2 FOIA requests since the last report to the board.
Thank you, Ross. Item 12.0, reports to the Board of Education. Anybody want to add something?
So as usual, over break, I was at NSSEO, this time Facilities and Finance Committee. We are developing, similar to how we have a 10-year facility plan here, we're doing the same thing at NSSEO. One of the things this may mean is traditionally at the end of the year when NSSEO has extra money, that money gets returned to districts. The plan is to, in the future, maybe retain that money and build up a fund because there's several facilities that need windows, HVAC, asbestos removal, that sort of stuff, the big ticket stuff. And the concern is NSSEO doesn't have its own funding. Its funding comes from the 8 member districts of the co-op. So we would prefer to build up a little reserve there to handle those big projects rather than come to the districts and say, hey, we've got a building that's got these issues. We need X number of dollars, right? And so the plan is to develop a similar 10-year facilities plan to what we have here.
Do you want to talk about our Claremont? Want to talk about our Claremont visit in the 5th grade classroom and the science discussion we had? Cindy's not here though.
No, Cindy's not here. So yes, Randy and I visited Claremont since the last meeting, and we stopped in Ms. Wiggins' fifth grade classroom, and that was probably the best classroom visit we've had so far because they had lots of science questions for me, and we spent a good
Yeah, they were prepared.
hour
They were
talking
prepared for Joe, and I just sat there and watched, and it was enjoyable. How these
they had really good questions.
They really did. I mean,
Claremont.
it was actually impressive. It's like you could see how they're thinking, and then Joe's trying to answer the question sometimes up here. They think then he said I got down here, and he's like I got it back up here. they threw him a couple doozers too.
We have tutoring opportunities available, Dr. Sager.
That's my day job.
And we also want to add anything. I do want to encourage, I know I mentioned this last board meeting, if you do want to get to the class, get out and visit the schools, to reach out to Dr. Bresnan and Cindy, and they'll help organize it for you around your around your schedule. I also encourage you to look at our weekly updates when there's a calendar out there of events that are going on, like we're talking about the AVID and the lesser math kind of family nights and stuff like that. Encourage you to look at those. I know Mr. Mencia goes to a lot of the food trucks. Yeah, but there's a lot of things going on that it'd be nice if we could try and get to some of them. I know the holiday season I was trying to get to a bunch of concerts and I just couldn't make the concerts or the orchestra, the chorus concerts. I was kind of bummed that I missed those because overall it was great to see the students performing. So with that, sorry, Mardell.
All right. On the 23rd of January is the EdRed meeting. I am the EdRed representative and I would like to go to it. I don't know if anybody else is interested in going or not. However, there are 5 Mondays in January. So if you wanted to change the 23rd meeting to the 30th, which is the following 30 a day, that would make it available to anybody who wants to go to the EdRed meeting. And the EdRed's only, I think, once or twice a year. So whatever it is. So that's one thing that you can consider if you want to change it to the 30th. We still have another Monday in January. And then secondly, one of the main reasons I want to go to EdRed is, first of all, because I am the representative. And secondly, one of our administrators, Nicole Robinson, is one of the 2 people who is giving a presentation at the EdRed meeting. And I think it behooves us to go and support Nicole Robinson because she's been here a long time. She's very good member of our administrative team, and I'd like to hear what she's got to say and be there to support her. I think somebody from our district should be there, and anybody who wants to join me, I am definitely going. And let's see, is there anything else? Those I think are the main things that I had on my mind as far as changing the day of our meeting. That's up to the rest.
Well, I think we need to talk about that right now because I think we need to let the administration we also have to get notification out to the public if we're going to change the date.
The other thing, one other thing, I do not even know who's running for our school board in the next election. I haven't seen it in the paper. I get the paper, but I don't get it on Monday and Tuesday. And I know somebody said it was in the paper. I don't know who is running, and I would like to know who these people are. Also, I'd like to know if you think we should ask the junior highs to have some kind of a meeting, or if we should call the League of Women Voters, who normally have some kind of a meeting where all the candidates can come and.
Well, we don't get involved in the election part of the process, Mardell.
We always have some type of.
The League of Women Voters does that. That's not a district. District 59 does not participate in actual elections and stuff like that.
We don't do it, but I mean, my Lord, we ought to certainly give these people an opportunity to speak. And we don't have to be the organizer, but we can call the League of Women Voters.
The League of Women Voters will take care of that. They did it for the last election. They still do it. So that's not a district. That's not a district function. That's a district. That's not a district function. That is outside.
Well, will somebody please let me know who the candidates are, because I know Barbara Samaji is one. She's
Mardell. We cannot talk about that, and we cannot talk about that, Mardell.
All right. Well, how do I know who's even running?
Hopefully they'll reach out to you and ask you on personal on your email, but we can't discuss that. And
okay, I'll find out some other way.
So, but I think you bring up a great point about the EdRed and our January 23rd meeting. So I think that's something we need to discuss and go over right now.
Okay.
Because I think you bring a valid point for Dr. Robinson doing a presentation. So I don't know where everyone stands. I mean, I could change the date. I think I have to look at my calendar real quickly.
When is the February board meeting? Would
23rd. It's no, the January.
the next one
January.
after it, but the next one is the okay.
Oh,
Mhm.
At least not on Valentine's Day this time.
So I guess it's a 2 or 3 week break either way.
Right. It's a 2-week break now or a 3-week break.
Yeah. And then it's the same between that and the next meeting. So I'm okay changing it possible. But
I have my schedule up. I can change it too.
I can change it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
I can change it. Can you change it?
The
Yeah, it's still the
administration.
Monday.
No, what's the administration at? What's
I'm asking SLT now. So I know Cindy's not available, so we would have to plan for backup on that. Members of SLT input on the 30th.
I see some faces that are.
I got a couple thumbs up. Okay, so Dr. Ossel would not be available.
If you can't come, we'll come to you.
Yeah.
Which we always do.
Only if it's someplace warmer.
All right. So we've agreed. So we'll change it to the 30th then.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for bringing that, Mardell.
That's
That's a
fine.
great
Thank
point.
you.
Yeah. And then if anybody else wants to
and
attend the
Cindy,
EdRed, please let
I'm going
Cindy
to-
know by the end of by Wednesday.
To Ed Red. Is anybody else going?
You're all free on the 23rd.
Yeah, we're all free
so-
now. Hey, Robert, you don't have to pay for this one. It's free.
Free food?
Yeah.
So who's all going?
I'll look at see if I.
Yes or no? You're okay. Are you going?
All right. So can I? So I think if you want to go, I think you let Cindy know by Wednesday. With that, I can get a motion to we go into closed session.
Real
Oh, hold on.
quick,
Sorry.
just so I'm looking at the EdRed schedule, the portion where Dr. Robinson will be yes, thank you. Will be presenting is from 3 to 3:45. It is prior to the dinner. Then there's another session from 4 to 4:45 where that is not where she will be presenting. And then there's a networking hour from 5 to 6, and the dinner is not until 6 to 8. So technically, you could still make it to Dr. Robinson's presentation and come back in time for the meeting if you skip the dinner. Just throwing that out there before we upheaval everything.
So we already
upheave everything.
decided to change it to the 30th, didn't we?
Well, I
Not that
don't
we
think
have
we have
people
this
who
piece of
can't
information, so I thought I
attend.
would share it if that was the intention for why we would move it.
Why should we enjoy the dinner while we're there?
So just leave the meeting on the 30th then, and people can.
So Nicole's at 3:45. So
Yeah.
3
3 to 3.
3:45.
3 o'clock. Okay.
So I just say, how about we just leave the meeting on the 30th, and if anybody can attend on the 23rd, they'll attend on the 23rd. EdRed. But you'll need if you want to register, you need to let Cindy know by Wednesday.
I'm telling you right now, Cindy. I'm.
Yep. So,
yeah.
all right. Anything else before I make a motion to go to closed session? All right. Can I get a motion, please, to go to?
So moved.
Be it resolved that on the 9th day of January 2023, CCSD 59 Board of Education recesses in a closed meeting for the discussion of the items listed in A through D.
I'll second that.
Questions, comments? Roll call.
Where am I? Reed,
Aye.
Sager,
Aye.
Schumacher,
Aye.
Espino,
Aye.
Lang,
Aye.
Mencia,
Aye.
Petrielli, aye, and the motion passes.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.